Once upon a time, in the heart of Abuja's most prestigious residential enclave, Royal Vine Estate, lived a man who had everything. Power, private jets. But none of it mattered anymore. His name was Chike Obi, the founder of Obi Group, a real estate empire with footprints in 6 countries. Chike had made his first billion by age 30. His name rang out in boardrooms from Lagos to London. His face appeared on the covers of financial magazines. But beneath the designer suits and media praise was a man deeply tired. Tired of fake smiles. Tired of gold diggers. Tired of being loved for what he had, not who he was. That night, Chike stood alone on the balcony of his glass mansion, staring down at the estate his company had built from scratch. Every light in the neighborhood gleamed like polished marble. Children laughed in courtyards. Lovers took strolls. Music floated faintly from garden parties. He had built this world. Yet he didn't belong to it. He sipped his wine slowly, his phone buzzing beside him with another invitation to another event full of fake conversations and ulterior motives. Then he remembered his grandfather's words. To find the heart of a person, become someone who has nothing to offer but yourself. That night, Chike made a decision. One that would shock even his closest allies. The next morning, Chike summoned Hugo, his most trusted cousin and confidant, the only family member who knew about the heartache he carried quietly. "Hugo," he said calmly, "I want to disappear." Hugo blinked. "Bro, what are you talking about?" "I want to live inside this estate as a gateman." Hugo dropped his coffee. "You want to what?" "I've built palaces. Everyone bows when I enter. But not one person has ever looked at me and seen me. The man. Not the bank account. Not the brand. Just me. I want to find someone who can love me without any of this." Chike gestured around the luxury sitting room. Hugo tried to speak, then sighed. "You're serious?" "As serious as the loneliness that's been eating me alive." 2 weeks later, Chike was no longer the billionaire in Brioni suits. He was Obina, the new gateman assigned to House 24B in Royal Vine Estate. Gone were his Rolex and private chef. In their place, a dull green uniform, a tiny guard post beside the electric gate, and a creaky single mattress in the servants' quarters. A battered thermos replaced his wine glass. And his daily meals were plain rice or beans from the estate cook. At first, it was amusing. Then it was sobering. By the 3rd day, Chike realized something terrifying. He was invisible. Residents barely glanced at him. Some barked orders at him without greeting. Children threw wrappers near his feet. And the delivery men, even they ignored him like he didn't exist. He was used to VIP lounges and being saluted by board members. People didn't even see him. But in that invisibility, he found something real. One afternoon, while wiping dust off the estate gate, he heard soft footsteps approaching. A young woman in a blue uniform, clearly one of the domestic staff, stopped in front of him, holding a lunch cooler. "You've been standing in the sun all day," she said quietly. "Take this." Chike blinked. "Sorry? For me?" She nodded, placing the cooler in his hand. "Jollof and plantain. You remind me of my elder brother. He died doing guard work." Before Chike could respond, she was already walking away, back toward one of the staff buildings. He opened the cooler. The scent of pepper and spice hit him. And suddenly, his eyes stung with something he hadn't felt in years. Gratitude. Not for the food, but for the fact that someone, even for a moment, had seen him. That evening, as the estate darkened and porch lights flickered on, Chike sat in his tiny post, legs crossed, notebook open on his lap. He began to write. Day 3. I have been called, "Hey you," 6 times. 2 residents asked if I was a replacement or permanent. 1 woman said I looked too clean for a gateman. Only 1 person, the maid, offered kindness. The rest see right through me. He paused, then added. And yet I've never felt more alive. But the universe wasn't done testing him. The very next morning, a black SUV screeched to a halt outside the estate. A young woman in designer sunglasses stepped out, her heels clicking like gunshots on the driveway. Chike stood, ready to open the gate as she approached. She carried 2 shopping bags and a sour expression. As he moved to take the bags and greet her, she recoiled. "Don't touch me," she snapped. "I'm just trying to help, Ma. Do you know how much these bags cost? Your sweat alone could ruin them." Chike froze. Her voice was loud enough to draw attention. "Gatemen like you think being nice will make you important. Let me remind you, you're staff. Stick to the gate." Without another word, she stormed past him. And Chike stood there, stunned, fists clenched, not because of the insult, but because her face reminded him of every woman who'd once smiled at him when they thought he was rich. But now he was nothing. And so they treated him like nothing. That night, as he lay awake on the narrow mattress, Chike whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning." He had come here to suffer, to be tested, to be unseen. But what he truly wanted, more than answers, more than validation, was this: to find someone who would choose him, not his wealth. And if that meant spending months at the gate, being humiliated, mocked, and ignored, then so be it. Because maybe, just maybe, somewhere inside this estate, was the person who'd finally see Obinna the man, not Chike the billionaire. The next morning, Royal Vine Estate yawned itself into another day of quiet luxury. Gardeners trimmed hedges with military precision. Nannies pushed strollers past manicured lawns. Music hummed from balconies. But at the gate of House 24B, Chike, still Obinna to the world, sat on his small stool, watching everything. He had barely slept. The words from the woman in sunglasses still rang in his head. "Stick to the gate." Her voice had sliced deeper than he expected. Not because he cared about her opinion, but because it confirmed what he feared. People didn't just ignore him. They despised him. Just as he bent over to adjust his security boots, a loud pop cracked through the air like a gunshot. Then the unmistakable hiss of deflation. Tires. Chike shot up. From the far end of the estate lane, he saw a silver sedan wobble violently, then jerk to the right and screech to a halt. The rear tire was completely flat. He jogged toward it out of instinct. No cameras, no audience, just action. Inside the driver's seat, a woman leaned her head against the wheel, eyes shut tight. Her breathing looked uneven. "Madam?" Chike asked, tapping the window. She blinked, then slowly opened the door. Her face was striking, not model perfect, but tired beautiful. The kind of beauty that wasn't trying. The kind that told stories. Her voice was soft. "I'm fine. And this tire," she pointed, "has been threatening me since Monday." Chike smiled faintly. "I can help you change it, if you have a spare." She hesitated. "You know how to change tires?" "I've done worse," he said with a shrug. She gave a half laugh, stepped aside, and popped the trunk. Within minutes, Chike had rolled up his sleeves and crouched by the deflated tire, loosening bolts like a mechanic on autopilot. Sweat trickled down his neck, dust clung to his uniform, but his hands worked fast. The woman stood nearby, watching him, first with polite silence, then with something else. Curiosity. "You're new here," she said after a while. Chike nodded. "Obinna. I was transferred here from the Lecky property." She smiled, brushing a loose braid from her cheek. "Adora. I stay in Block C, Apartment 9. I work in HR." He paused. "Nice to meet you, Madam Adora." "Don't call me Madam. It makes me feel like my auntie." Chike laughed, a real one. The first since he started this charade. As he tightened the last bolt on the spare tire, she walked closer, hands on hips. "You're surprisingly good at this, Obinna." He stood, brushing dust off his knees. "Thank you. Just doing my job." "No," she said. "Your job is to guard gates. But you chose to help. That means something." Her words surprised him. So did the way she looked at him. She didn't look through him. She looked at him. A beat of silence passed. Then she reached into her car, pulled out a water bottle, and handed it to him. "You look like you could use this." Chike accepted it. "You don't have to." "I know I don't," she said. "But I want to." That made all the difference. Later that afternoon, Chike sat at his post, sipping the last of the water, watching people pass. Some nodded at him. Some didn't. But he didn't care. Because for the first time since he became Obinna, Someone had seen him without suspicion, pity, or contempt. And not just anyone. Eudora. That evening, Hugo called. Bro. How's it going? Chike smiled into the burner phone. I changed a woman's tire. Hugo snorted. Ah, so you're officially useful now. She gave me water, Chike added. Wait, that's big. Was she fine? She was different. Hugo's tone sharpened. Different how? She didn't talk down to me. She listened. Hugo whistled. Sounds like we've met our first test subject. Chike went quiet. I'm not ready to test her, he said softly. I want to know her first. The next day, Eudora passed by the gate again. She wore a teal blazer, heels clicking lightly as she walked. Chike rose halfway to greet her. She paused. Obina, she said, good morning. Good morning, Ma. I mean, Eudora. She smiled. You remembered. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned against the gate post and began unwrapping a meat pie. Breakfast? She offered. Chike blinked. For me? No, she said sarcastically, for the other gateman standing beside you. He laughed again, and this time it echoed. Over the next week, these little encounters continued. Morning greetings. Shared bread. Teasing jokes. Side glances. He noticed how she always held a hardcover notebook in one arm, not a tablet like other residents. She noticed how he always read old books during breaks. Things fall apart one day, man's search for meaning another. Where did you go to school? She asked one morning. Chike froze. He'd prepared for this. School of hard knocks, he joked. Street life. She raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Well, you read like someone who's been taught. He shrugged. Maybe I just learned from watching. But Chike knew it was only a matter of time before this warm bubble popped. Every moment with Eudora brought joy, but also dread. Because eventually, the truth would come knocking. He wasn't just Obina, the gateman. He was Chike Obi, billionaire developer, owner of this entire estate, and the man who had built the very house Eudora lived in. And if she ever found out, would she still smile at him? Would she still share breakfast? Would she still look at him the same way? That night, he wrote in his notebook again. Day 10. Her name is Eudora. Her eyes are tired but kind. She offered me water and meat pie, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. I don't know what this is, but I feel alive. He paused, then added, for the first time in years, I don't feel alone. Another Sunday dawned over Royal Vine Estate, the kind of day where luxury hung in the air like perfume. Joggers paced the quiet lanes, drivers washed SUVs with military precision, and housekeepers swept invisible dust from doorsteps. At the main gate of Block C, Chike, still hidden beneath his Obina disguise, was doing what he had come to do best. Observe. Eudora hadn't passed by yet, which was unusual. She normally left around 7:45 a.m. for church, always alone, always with her notebook tucked neatly under one arm and a calm smile that greeted him like clockwork. But today, nothing. He checked his watch. 8:13 a.m. He was about to return to polishing the steel gate when two voices drifted toward him, high-pitched, nasal, and confident in their power. It was Mrs. Onari and Binta, the two women everyone in the estate either feared, flattered, or avoided. Dressed in flamboyant lace and dripping with jewelry, they clicked down the sidewalk like they owned the entire postcode. They didn't acknowledge him as they passed, but they spoke like he wasn't there. Have you seen Eudora lately? Binta asked, sipping a pink smoothie. Mrs. Onari scoffed. That woman? Still single. Still acting like her Excel sheets make her better than anyone. My driver said she was chatting with the gateman last week. Binta gasped. This one? They both turned toward Chike briefly, then giggled. She should be careful, Mrs. Onari added with a smirk, before she ends up pregnant for a security man. These Abuja men come in uniforms now. They laughed again, loud, empty laughs, and strutted away, heels tapping like gunshots. Chike clenched his jaw. His hands curled into fists by instinct. But he said nothing. Not because he was weak, but because he understood now. This was the world Adaora lived in. A world of judgmental whispers and elite pride, where someone like Obina the Gateman was seen as filth, and a woman like Adaora was seen as foolish for even saying hello. An hour later, Adaora finally appeared, holding her heels in one hand and walking barefoot. Chaik stood. She looked tired. Her eyes were slightly red. "Morning," he said carefully. "Morning," she replied, managing a smile. "Power went out. My son couldn't sleep." Chaik's brain froze. She caught his expression and chuckled. "Yeah. Surprise. I have a 7-year-old. Chaik exhaled, smiling. "I thought you were hiding something huge." "I am," she said, deadpan. "He steals plantain when I'm not looking." They both laughed. Then she added softly, "But he's my whole heart." They sat on opposite sides of the estate fence for the next 15 minutes, she with her heels dangling from her fingers, he with his notepad open. And they talked. About books. About her job in HR. About how her ex left when their son was just 3. About how hard it was to raise a child in a place where people thought money replaced manners. She said something that stuck with him. "People in this estate act like kindness is beneath them. But I'd rather be alone with peace than surrounded by wolves in lace." Chaik smiled at that. And for the first time, he let a truth slip from his lips. "You're stronger than you know." But just when the moment felt perfect, a sleek Lexus curved around the bend and parked roughly in front of the gate. From it stepped a storm in stilettos. Fierce. Designer head to toe. The daughter of a senator. And, unbeknownst to Adaora, the woman Chaik's family had been trying to force him to marry for over a year. Amara looked at Chaik with disgust. "You," she snapped, "what are you still doing here? Didn't I tell you to stop loitering near women?" Chaik raised his brows. "Ma, I work here." "Then act like it," she barked. "This is a residential estate, not a romance novel." She turned to Adaora without even softening her tone. "You're chatting with the help now?" she asked coldly. "Interesting taste." Adaora stood slowly, brushing imaginary dust from her dress. Her voice was calm, but her words were sharp. "First of all, he's not the help. He's a person. With a name. Maybe if you tried using it, you'd find your manners." Amara's nostrils flared. Chaik's heart stopped. "So did time." "I don't know who you are," Adaora continued, stepping forward, "but I know arrogance when I see it. If you can't speak with respect, don't speak at all." Amara glared, then scoffed. "You'll regret this," she hissed, before striding off like a storm cloud in a lace gown. Adaora turned to Chaik. "You okay?" Chaik nodded. Slowly. He was more than okay. He was stunned. Someone had defended him. In public. At the gate. Adaora exhaled. "Some people are born with privilege. Others are born with decency." And with that, she turned and walked off, barefoot, proud, and radiant in her own quiet rebellion. That night, Chaik couldn't sleep. His notebook remained open for hours. He finally wrote. Day 17. Today, she stood up for me. In front of Amara, the very woman my mother says I should marry. Adaora doesn't know who I am. And still, she chose me. Not because I was rich, but because it was right. He stared at the page for a long time. Then added, I am falling. God help me. I think I'm falling for her. Morning light poured over Royal Vine Estate like a golden veil, warming the marble pavements and bougainvillea hedges. But Chaik didn't notice any of it. He was already at his post, earlier than usual, uniform tucked, boots clean, back straight, watching the road where Adaora usually walked with her heels in one hand and fire in her spirit. But today, she wasn't alone. Trailing beside her, dragging a Spider-Man backpack that looked too big for his tiny frame, was a boy. Brown skin. Neatly trimmed hair. Nose slightly runny. Eyes full of questions. Good morning, Adaora called as they passed. Chaik rose. Good morning. She slowed. This is Ibuka, she said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. My reason for breathing. Ibuka, say good morning to the gate uncle. Ibuka blinked at Chaik. Then mumbled, Good morning, sir. Chaik squatted to his level, smiling. Good morning, champ. Off to school? The boy nodded, still half shy. He's nervous, Adora said. It's his first week at the new school. Why nervous? Chaik asked him gently. Ibuka shrugged. Because the other kids have 2 parents. Adora's face tightened. Chaik's smile didn't waver. I'll tell you a secret, he whispered. Batman only had 1 parent, and he still saved the whole city. Ibuka blinked. Then, a small, unexpected grin. Adora laughed softly. You've just made my morning easier. Just doing my job, Chaik replied, but they both knew he wasn't talking about gatekeeping. The rest of the day passed quietly, but Chaik's mind kept returning to the boy's eyes. They were curious, fragile, brave. He remembered his own childhood, growing up with a mother who sold fabrics in Oddbeat Market and a father who died too early. There were days he didn't eat until sunset, and nights he slept listening to generator hums from wealthier homes, wishing for something more. He knew that look in Ibuka's eyes. The look of someone learning to be strong too soon. Later that evening, Chaik sat at his post reading an old copy of The Little Prince. The book was worn, its pages annotated, a relic from his university days in Paris. He never expected to see it again, but one of his staff had recently found it in an old donation box. As he read, he noticed small footsteps approaching. It was Ibuka, still in uniform, dragging his backpack like a tired soldier. Where's your mum? Chaik asked gently. She's in a meeting on her laptop, Ibuka said, fidgeting. She said I could play outside. Chaik nodded, then gestured to the bench near the gate. Want to sit? Ibuka hesitated, then shuffled over. After a beat of silence, he pointed to the book in Chaik's hand. What's that? A story. About a little boy who travels across planets. Can he fly? In his own way, yes. Ibuka's eyes lit up. Read it. Chaik smiled, flipping to the first page. Once upon a time, he began, on a tiny planet not much bigger than a house, there lived a boy who loved sunsets. For the next 20 minutes, Chaik read aloud. Ibuka leaned closer. Every sentence made the world at the gate disappear. And for the first time, Chaik wasn't a billionaire in disguise. He wasn't a man running from loneliness. He was just someone reading to a boy who needed a story. Adora appeared from the corner of the block, looking exhausted but holding a small food flask. She stopped when she saw them, her son curled beside the gatekeeper, listening to The Little Prince like it was gospel. She didn't interrupt. Just watched. Eyes soft. After a moment, she approached quietly. Sorry to interrupt the universe, she said playfully. Ibuka turned. Mummy. He was reading the flying boy story. Adora smiled. I see. But now it's time to shower and eat. Ibuka stood and whispered to Chaik. Can you read more tomorrow? Chaik nodded solemnly. Tomorrow we'll meet the fox. The boy beamed and ran off. Adora lingered. She handed Chaik the flask. Fried yam and egg. Thank you for being kind to him. You didn't have to. I know, she cut in. But I wanted to. She looked at him again, differently this time. As if seeing something she hadn't before. Not just kindness. But then she walked away. And Chaik, holding a warm flask in one hand and a worn-out book in the other, realized something terrifying. He didn't just like her anymore. He was beginning to need her. That night, Yugo called. Bro, update. Chaik exhaled. I read a book to her son. Silence. Then laughter. Wait, you're doing bedtime stories now? Chaik didn't laugh. She trusts me. The boy likes me. It's getting dangerous. Yugo's voice lowered. You're getting attached. I already am. In his notebook that night, Chaik wrote. Day 23. Ibuka reminds me of myself. Adora stronger than she knows. I thought I was pretending, but maybe the gate isn't the disguise. Maybe it's the only place I've ever been seen. And beneath it, in shaky handwriting. Tomorrow, I'll meet the fox. The next few days blurred together. To the outside world, Chaik, still wearing the identity of Obina the Gateman, was just a quiet figure at the entrance of Block C. To Adora's son, Ibuka, he was Uncle Book Reader. To Adora? Even she didn't know yet. But the way her eyes lingered, the way her steps always slowed when she passed the gate, it said everything words couldn't. And still, Chike said nothing. Not because he didn't want to tell her, but because timing was everything. And the world was watching. It started on a Wednesday. Late afternoon. Clouds hanging low. The kind of stillness that makes birds stop singing. Chike was reading under the security lamp when the estate's silence shattered. A scream. Then another. And then smoke. Climbing from the back of Block E. Chike dropped his book, heart racing. By the time he reached the source, chaos had bloomed like wildfire. A kitchen gas cylinder had exploded in one of the service quarters. Flames licked the side walls. A nanny wailed as people ran in all directions. But one sound sliced through the noise like glass. "My baby! He's inside!" A woman screamed, clawing toward the building, restrained by a driver. "Second floor. My son is up there." No one moved. The security supervisors stood frozen. Even the firefighters hadn't arrived yet. But Chike? He ran. Up the first stairwell, smoke clawing his eyes. Past the second floor, coughing. Then he heard it. A child's cry. Behind a half-closed door, smoke pouring through the gap. Chike pushed inside without thinking. He dropped to the floor, crawling on elbows. The heat was unbearable. A small figure huddled by the bed, coughing violently. Chike scooped him up, wrapped him in his uniform jacket, and staggered out, barely able to see. By the time they emerged, the crowd had doubled. Phones out. Everyone watching. He handed the child to the paramedics. And collapsed to his knees. Face black with soot. Chest heaving. Uniform torn. But alive. The next morning, he was on every resident WhatsApp group. The new gateman at Block C ran into the fire before the fire service even showed up. "I heard he used to be military." "No. I think he's just one of those educated ones doing this work for visa plans. His name is Obina. My housegirl says he reads French books." Adora's been spending a lot of time near that gate lately. That last message, it spread like wildfire. By Friday, the whispers had started. At the mini-mart near the estate playground, two women in silk bonnets exchanged words as Aora picked up cereal for Ibuka. "She's too friendly with that Gateman. You know how single women get anything with a pulse. She should know her place. That one's probably trying to trap her with a pregnancy." Aora said nothing. She heard every word. But she said nothing. Not because she was weak, but because gossip always dies when you stop feeding it. Still, when she got home, her hands trembled as she unlocked the door. That evening, Chike sat at his post, still sore from the burns, bandage peeking out from his sleeve. Aora approached slowly. She looked at him. Really looked at him. "You could have died." He smiled faintly. But the child didn't. Aora nodded. Then she whispered, "They're talking, you know." "I figured," Chike replied. Silence stretched. Then she said something he didn't expect. "They talked when I was pregnant without a husband. They talked when I raised Ibuka alone. If they're talking again, it means I'm still alive." And just like that, Chike's heart cracked open, quietly, without drama. Because this woman, she didn't just survive fire. She survived people. The next morning, Hugo called. "Bro, you made the estate WhatsApp group. Video and everything." "I didn't do it for praise," Chike said. "I know. But you know what's next, right?" "What?" "The rumors. The judgment. The estate elite doesn't like when one of their own talks to the help." Chike was quiet. Then he said, "Let them hate me." Hugo exhaled. "You're in too deep." "I know." That night, Aora didn't go home immediately after work. She stood by the gate, holding a warm takeaway bag. "For the hero who smells like smoke," she said lightly. He opened it, spicy jollof rice, goat meat, fried plantain, and a can of malt. She sat beside him on the wooden bench. They ate in silence. And then, without looking at him, she asked, "Obina, what did you do before this job?" Chike froze. He chewed slowly, swallowed hard, then gave the answer he had practiced for weeks. "I used to build houses." She turned to him, smiling. "I believe you." That night, in his notebook he wrote, Day 29. Today she didn't defend me. She sat with me. And that's louder than defense. There is a kind of love that doesn't announce itself. It just stays. And then, at the bottom, they can whisper. But her silence is the loudest thing I've ever heard. It was only a matter of time. 31 days. That's how long Chike Obi had managed to disappear into the skin of Obina the Gateman, living in a servant's room, eating from takeaway packs, reading books under estate security lights, and waiting for Ada Ora's laughter like it was morning prayer. But no one stays hidden forever. Not when your last name is Obi. Not when your disappearance makes headlines in business circles. And especially not when your parents are Chief and Lady Obi, the kind of old money elite who believed legacy was sacred and personal happiness a luxury the family couldn't afford. On a Thursday morning at precisely 9:04 a.m., the storm arrived. Not with thunder, but with a black Range Rover and a gloved driver. The gates of Royal Vine Estate creaked open. No one knew the car, but its license plates sent a ripple through the guards at the main entrance. OBJ0010. Only one man used that plate. Chief Emeka Obi, the father of Chike, the architect of power. Chike was at his post, wiping down the railings, when he saw the car approaching. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, but something in his stomach turned. The vehicle rolled to a stop 10 meters away. The back window slid down with slow, deliberate grace. Inside sat a man carved from politics, money, and expectation. Sharp agbada, silver beard, cold, calculating eyes. "Get in," the man said. Chike obeyed. Inside the car, silence reigned. No greetings, no affection. Just disappointment, heavy, old, and weaponized. "You have been playing masquerade with your life," Chief Obi said. Chike didn't respond. "You disappeared. Cancelled meetings. Walked away from your company. Your name is on investment documents worth billions, and you're out here changing tires for single mothers." Chike turned to face him. "I needed time." "No," his father said. "You wanted drama." Then, the dagger. "We've spoken to the Adanugas. Amara is ready. The wedding can happen before Q4. Chike's heart went still. The woman who saw his position, not his person. The one Ada Ora had clashed with at the gate. The one his mother kept on speed dial. "I'm not marrying Amara," he said quietly. "You don't get to decide that," Chief Obi replied coldly. When Chike returned to his post 2 hours later, Ada Ora noticed his eyes were different. She didn't ask. He didn't explain. But he looked older, like something inside him had broken or hardened. She offered Puff Puff and Zobo. He accepted both, but said very little. Later that night, he wrote in his notebook. Day 31. The world I ran from just knocked on the gate. And I opened it. My father wants Amar. My silence was a rebellion. But now, it feels like betrayal, Ada Ora. Back at the Obi mansion, Chief and Lady Obi sat in their private lounge, their empire stretching out before them in properties, headlines, and polished furniture. Lady Obi sipped wine. "He's in love with the woman," she said flatly. Chief Obi grunted. "It's not love. It's weakness. A distraction. She's a single mother. She'll anchor him to struggle. Then we make sure she disappears," Lady Obi said, eyes glittering. And with that, a new chapter began. Not one Chike would write, but one that would be written against him. The next morning, Ada Ora received a visitor at her door. A well-dressed woman. Late 50s. Class in her posture. Ice in her tone. "Good morning," she said coolly. "May I speak to you?" Ada Ora nodded slowly. "Who are you?" "I'm Chike's mother." Ada Ora's eyes widened. "Chike. You know him as Obina," Lady Obi said. "But that's not his name. Not his life. And not your future." Ada Ora stood frozen in the hallway. "I came here to thank you," Lady Obi continued. "You've played your part. It's time to let him go." "I don't understand," Ada Ora said, her voice brittle. "Yes, you do," Lady Obi said, pulling a white envelope from her clutch. "Take this. It's more than you'll make in 5 years." Ada Ora didn't take the envelope. She didn't move. But her eyes burned. "You think you can buy everything," she whispered. Lady Obi smiled. We bought the silence of politicians, judges, and companies. Do you think you're harder? Aotearoa stepped back and closed the door without another word. That night, Chike waited at the gate. But Aotearoa didn't come. Not even Ibuka passed by. The silence was heavier than usual. He waited until the estate dimmed into night. And still, nothing. Back in his room, he opened his notebook. But didn't write. For the first time in 32 days, he had no words. Just a question ringing in his head. What if I've already lost her? The silence lingered. A day passed. Then 2. Then 3. No morning greetings. No puff-puff. No Ibuka running with crayon on his fingers. No Aotearoa. Nothing. Chike, still wearing the name Obina like a chain, waited each morning like a man in a confessional. But the gate stayed closed. By the 4th day, he couldn't take it anymore. He took off the uniform. Wore a plain white t-shirt and jeans. No security boots. No radio. Just him. Chike Obi. He walked to her door. Heart pounding like war drums. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. The door opened slowly. Aotearoa stood there. Beautiful. Wounded. Her eyes said everything before her lips moved. You lied to me, she said softly. Chike froze. My son talks about you like you're a superhero, she continued. He wanted you to read again. He thought we were your friends. Chike opened his mouth. Then closed it. I didn't lie about how I felt, he said. You lied about who you were. She said it like a knife. Not in rage, but in heartbreak. I wanted something real, Chike said. Everywhere I go, people treat me like an ATM. Or a trophy. Or a business opportunity. No one ever asks about me. Not Chike Obi the CEO. Me. Aotearoa's jaw tightened. So you dressed as a gateman? What is this, a reality show? A test? No. I wasn't testing you. I was trying to find peace. She looked at him then. A long, hard look, like she was searching for something. And not finding it. You should have told me the moment we mattered. I was scared you'd disappear. But I disappeared anyway, she said. Didn't I? Silence. Then she asked, was anything real? Chike stepped forward. Everything. Every single moment. The meat pie. The book. The boy. You. But you gave me the version of you you thought I could handle, she said. You never gave me the chance to know the truth. Chike's voice cracked. I'm sorry. She nodded slowly. You're not the first man who's left me with silence. But I thought you were the first one who wouldn't lie. Then, quietly, without slamming, without yelling, she closed the door. This time, it didn't feel like rejection. It felt like grief. Chike stood there for a long time. Long enough for a neighbor to pass and raise an eyebrow. Long enough for Ibuka to peek from the window and quickly disappear. Long enough to realize he had broken what he came here to build. That night, back in his servant quarters, the billionaire with the designer suits and offshore assets sat on a bare mattress, knees drawn to chest. He didn't call Hugo. He didn't open his laptop. He didn't touch his food. He just stared at his notebook. Then finally wrote, Day 36. The truth has been spoken. And I'm still not sure who I am when I'm not pretending. She didn't slam the door. But she closed it. And sometimes that's worse. Meanwhile, across town, in the Obi mansion, Chief and Lady Obi were celebrating. She didn't take the envelope, Lady Obi admitted, swirling her wine. But she stepped away, Chief Obi said. Which means she understands now. They didn't know about the door. Or the boy. Or the silent heartbreak. All they knew was that their son had returned to reality, their version of it. Amar was back in the picture. Plans were being made. An engagement dinner was scheduled. And the press release was already drafted. But Chike hadn't come home. Not really. He went through the motions. Took one meeting. Signed one document. Smiled once at Amara, and hated himself for it. Then he told Hugo, I need one last moment. One moment to do what? Hugo asked. To say goodbye. The next day, Chike wrote a letter. Then he walked back to the gate. No uniform. Just the man. He slid the envelope under Aotearoa's door and left before she could open it. Inside the letter, his handwriting trembled. You asked me if anything was real. The answer is yes. The bench was real. The book was real. Your son's smile was real. And the way I feel about you has never been more real. I didn't lie because I didn't care. I lied because I cared too much. Because I didn't think I deserved someone who looked at me like I was enough without the money. I don't want anything from you now. Not forgiveness. Not love. Just the chance to say, I'm sorry. And thank you. For seeing me. She didn't respond. Not that day. Not the next. Not even when the press posted a blurry photo of Chaik with Amara at a charity brunch, her hand casually on his shoulder. Eudora saw it. Ibuka saw it too. Is Uncle Obinna still our friend? He asked. Eudora didn't answer. She just folded the letter again and tucked it inside her notebook, right between the pages of The Little Prince. 2 weeks passed. The engagement was official. Chaik Obi, son of Chief Emeka Obi and heir to Obi Group, was set to marry Amara Adenuga, the poised daughter of a powerful senator. The papers had it. The blogs screamed it. The socialites reposted it with captions like, Power couple goals. Perfect match, wealth marries wealth. She said yes. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know about the gate. They didn't know about her. Eudora read the announcement at 5:42 a.m. on a Monday, the hour between quiet and chaos, when Ibuka was still asleep and the sun was only beginning to stretch. The headline stung. The photo stung more. Amara's manicured hand resting lightly on Chaik's shoulder. His fake smile. Her glinting diamond ring. Adeora's fingers trembled as she closed the tab. She didn't cry. But something inside her, something delicate and blooming, quietly folded shut. At breakfast, Ibuka said, Mummy, Uncle Obinna's on TV. Eudora took a deep breath. His real name is Chaik. Ibuka frowned. But I like Obinna. Eudora smiled faintly. So did I. Back at the Obi mansion, Chaik was a prisoner in designer chains. The family called it a celebration. He called it damage control. He sat beside Amara at the engagement brunch, smiling through clenched teeth, laughing when required. She was beautiful, polished, fluent in French and networking. But beneath the diamonds and curated grace was someone who never looked at him the way Eudora did, like she could see the war behind his eyes and still choose to stay. After the brunch, Hugo cornered Chaik in the hallway. You're miserable, he said bluntly. I know. She didn't come to the gate, Hugo added. But she still lives in your mind rent-free. I know. Then why are you marrying Amara? Chaik was quiet, then said, because it's easier than starting another war. But the real war wasn't in the media or the marriage. It was happening behind closed doors, in boardrooms and whispers. And it started with a betrayal. That evening, Hugo handed Chaik a folder. Look inside, he said grimly. Chaik opened it. Inside, screenshots, bank transactions, email threads. All leading back to one name. Martha. And one horrifying truth. She had been the one who tipped off the press about Chaik's location. She had hired a private investigator to follow him into Royal Vine Estate. She had leaked photos to the media of a billionaire playing Gateman, before Eudora ever closed the door. The viral headlines had been her doing. The fake smiles at the brunch now made sense. She hadn't just wanted Chaik's love. She wanted to own the version of him the world respected, and destroy the version she couldn't. Chaik felt sick. She knew about Eudora, he whispered. Hugo nodded. The moment she heard whispers about you and a single mother, she acted. Fast. Chaik closed the folder slowly. Then stood. I'm ending this. But he was too late. Because across town, in her modest apartment, Eudora had already packed her bags. Not because of the scandal. Not because of the engagement. But because she couldn't let her son grow up thinking that pretending to be someone else is the price of being chosen. She left a note with the estate manager. Thank you for your time at Royal Vine Estate. We're moving closer to my mother's place. Kindly forward final bills. No fanfare. No drama. Just a woman refusing to beg for the bare minimum, honesty. Chaik arrived at her door that same evening, sweating, folder in hand. He knocked. Twice. No answer. He peeked through the window. Empty. He asked the guard on duty. They moved out this morning, the man said. Gone before sunrise. Chaik nodded slowly, then sat on the pavement. For the first time in years, billionaire or not, he felt powerless. That night, Chaik returned to his room and opened his notebook. But this time, he didn't write a date. He just wrote her name. Over and over. Until the page tore. Across the city, Adaora and Ibuka sat in her mother's flat. Smaller, humbler, but full of warmth. Ibuka tugged her sleeve. Mummy, will I see Uncle Obina again? Adaora smiled weakly. Sometimes, love is about letting go, she whispered. He tilted his head. But, do we still love people when we let go? She kissed his forehead. Always. The morning started with headlines. Big ones. Loud ones. Billionaire heir cancels engagement to senator's daughter, leaves press confused. Breaking, Obi Groupso refuses to comment on Amara split. No wedding, he says coldly. Gateman rumors return. What is Chaik Obi hiding? Chaik stood at the podium of a press event meant to announce a merger deal. But instead of talking business, he did something no billionaire had done before. He told the truth. To the board, the media, and the public, he said clearly, I will not be marrying Amara Adenuga. Flashbulbs exploded. Murmurs spread like fire. I want to be clear. This is not a scandal. This is a choice. A personal one. I will not pretend for the sake of partnerships, photo ops, or family expectations. The room held its breath. And if that costs me a contract or a headline, so be it. And just like that, he stepped off the stage. Back home, Chief Obi hurled a glass across the room. You've embarrassed us. Lady Obi clutched her pearls. Do you know what this means for our standing? Chaik remained calm. I've been embarrassing myself for years, he replied. This is the first time I'm doing something honest. But what truly unraveled everything wasn't the engagement fallout. It was the video. Leaked anonymously. Clipped from estate CCTV. It showed a young woman standing beside a security gate, defending a man in uniform against a screaming Amara. If you can't speak with respect, Adaora had said, then don't speak at all. The video went viral in hours. Who is the woman who stood for the Gateman? Adaora, the voice that humbled the elite. And with it came new heat. Some bloggers praised her. Others mocked her. But for the first time, the public saw Adaora. And so did Chaik's enemies. At his office, his PR manager slid him a folder. We've traced the leak. It wasn't Amara this time. Then who? The manager hesitated. Your mother. Chaik stared blankly. She leaked the video herself, the manager said. To paint Adaora as dramatic. To imply she was a distraction that cost you your empire. Chaik drove across town that same night. Straight to the Obi mansion. No driver. No entourage. Just a man ready for war. He entered the family study without knocking. Lady Obi looked up from her wine glass, unbothered. You know, she said softly, I raised you better than to embarrass your name in front of the whole country. Chaik stepped closer. And I was raised better than to destroy a woman just to save face. Lady Obi's expression hardened. She would have ruined you. She saved me, Chaik snapped. From becoming you. Silence. Then, slowly Lady Obi rose to her feet. You think this is love? It's a phase. You'll outgrow it. No, Chaik said. I'm outgrowing this. All of it. Later that night, Chaik called Yugo. Help me find her, he said. Already tried, Yugo replied. She's off social media. No estate forwarding address. Disconnected her number. Even the market aunties don't know where she went. Chaik swallowed hard. Then I'll find her the old way. The next day, Chaik made a public appeal. Not in a press release. Not in a scandalous tweet. But in a full-page newspaper letter. Printed in ink. No filters. No PR gloss. Just this. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I didn't deserve your kindness. But you gave both anyway. I became a gateman looking for love. But you showed me something rarer, respect. Dignity. Silence that spoke louder than praise. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking you to know this. You are the first person who ever made me wish I could start over. Not as a billionaire, but as a man worth your time. If you see this, just know. I still carry the note you left tucked inside your notebook. Still trying to become the man you saw. The paper hit the streets by sunrise. And somewhere in a small apartment on the outskirts of Kubwa, Adaora's mother opened it. She read the letter. Then walked into the bedroom. Baby, she said softly, you need to see this. Adaora, still in her wrapper, still battling exhaustion, took the paper wordlessly. Her hands shook as she read. Ibuka peeked over her shoulder. Mummy, that's Uncle Obina's real name, right? Adaora didn't respond. But her eyes filled with tears. Quiet. Not dramatic. Not for show. Just the soundless ache of being seen again. The right way this time. That night, Chaik waited at the gate. Not as a billionaire. Not even as a man in love. But as someone who had finally learned how to wait without control. And hope without expectation. Evening in Abuja brought a hush. Not silence, but that peculiar calm that sits right before something breaks or blooms. Chaik stood by the estate gate. Same place he once kept watch. Only now, it wasn't a disguise. It was a memory. A reckoning. A place of origin and consequence. The sun was almost gone when a car pulled up slowly. He didn't turn. He felt her presence before he saw her. She stepped out. Simple dress. No makeup. Shoes slightly dusty from a long walk. And yet, she looked like justice. Adaora turned. Eyes locking. Time pausing. Then she spoke. I saw the letter. He nodded. Silence. She stepped closer. Each word deliberate. I didn't come here because of romance. I didn't come because of Ibuka. I came because I needed to say some things out loud. For myself. Chaik didn't interrupt. Didn't plead. Didn't reach for her hand. He simply listened. I loved Obina, she said. The humble man who cared about stories, who read with my son, who didn't flinch when the generator blew out or when the tomatoes were overpriced. That was me, Chaik whispered. No, Adaora snapped, pain sharp in her voice. That was a version of you. The safe version. The one who wouldn't risk rejection by being real. She drew a breath. You said you lied because you cared. But that lie stole my choice. My right to decide whether I could love you as you really were. Chaik's voice broke. I was scared. I was too, she fired back. I've been left before. Mocked before. I didn't let you in because you were perfect. I let you in because you were present. The pause. The beat. Then softer. But you weren't present, were you? Not really. You were performing. Chaik took a shaky step forward. No more performances. Adaora shook her head. You don't get to declare that now. He stopped. Her tone softened, not forgiving but clearer. You did what you thought was best. And maybe you meant well. But meaning well doesn't erase damage. Chaik lowered his eyes. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, she replied. Because I didn't come to give it. I came to say this. I am whole without you. I was whole before you. And I will be after. Her voice trembled. But you changed something in me. And I needed to face you to take it back. They stood there. Two people once entangled in secrets and soft laughter. Now separated by truth. No longer enemies. But not lovers either. Just witnesses to a love that tried and failed under the weight of fear. Then, as the sun finally dipped below the horizon, Adaora said, Take care of yourself, Chaik. She turned to leave. Wait, he called gently. Will I ever see you again? She paused. And smiled. Not out of affection. Out of release. I hope you see yourself again first. Then she walked away. This time, not in anger. But in power. Chaik stood there for a long time. Then opened his notebook. Day 50. She came. Not to rescue. Not to return. But to remind me who I've been, and who I still could become. Love, it turns out, doesn't always stay. Sometimes it teaches. Then leaves. Meanwhile, across town, Adaora tucked Ibuka into bed. He clutched his favorite book, The Little Prince. Mummy. Yes, baby. Do you miss Uncle Obena? She paused. Then kissed his forehead. Sometimes. But missing someone doesn't mean we need to go back. Ibuka thought for a moment. Will we be okay? She smiled gently. We already are. It had been 23 days since that final conversation. Since the gate. Since, I hope you see yourself again first. And Chaik did. But not in the way he expected. He stopped showing up at board meetings in suits tailored for intimidation. He started showing up in polos and sleeves rolled up. Listening. Learning. Delegating. He sold his custom Rolls-Royce. Donated the proceeds to a tech education fund for low-income girls. He hired more single mothers into his company. Promoted gatekeepers to internal security coordinators. Small, his mother muttered. Too small for headlines. But that was the point. No headlines. No grand gestures. No applause. Just work. The kind you do when no one is watching. The kind Ada Ora would have respected. Meanwhile, across town, Ada Ora's life was anything but quiet. Because the video of her defending the Gateman had gone fully viral again. But this time, not because of Chaik. This time, because a national news outlet picked it up and titled it, "The Woman Who Spoke Truth to Power and Didn't Flinch." The internet pounced. Some called her a heroine. Some said she was stupid. Others accused her of clout chasing, saying she had known Chaik's identity all along. Typical gold digger plot, one blog wrote. She's the reason he ended the engagement, another claimed. She ruined everything. Ada Ora was stunned. I didn't even speak to the press, she told her mother. You became a symbol, Mama replied. Symbols don't get to explain themselves. It got worse. Paparazzi at Ibuka's school. Bloggers knocking on her aunt's door. Job offers disguised as interview bait. One TV host even said, "We'll pay you 5 million Nigerian nairas for a 1-hour sit-down. Just tell us how you seduced the billionaire in disguise." Ada Ora hung up. Blocked the number. But the damage was done. She lost a tailoring client who didn't want drama around the brand. Ibuka came home crying after a schoolmate said, "Your mummy makes rich men cry." Ada Ora shut off her phone for 3 days. Not because she was afraid, but because she was tired. On the 4th day, a letter arrived. No signature. Just a card. You don't owe anyone your story. The people who matter already know the truth. See? She stared at it for a long time. Then tucked it into the back of her notebook. Right behind the original note she wrote when she left Royal Vine. Sometimes dignity is louder than goodbye. Elsewhere, Chaik watched the chaos unfold. He had told his team to let the storm pass. But one headline made him snap. Single mother who lured billionaire now turns down 5 million Nigerian nairas offer. Who does she think she is? Chaik called his media officer. Buy that outlet, he said flatly. Sir? Buy it? Fire the editor. Issue a retraction. Replace it with a piece about Ada Ora's business. I want her craft, not her scandal, to trend. The officer stammered, You can't control the whole internet. I'm not trying to, Chaik said. I'm just fixing what I broke. That same week, Ada Ora received an unexpected feature. A women's magazine had published a spread titled, Quiet Strength, the seamstress who said no to noise. It focused on her craft, her process, her resilience, not the romance, not the scandal. It was a respectful. She smiled for the first time in weeks. That evening, Ibuka tugged her sleeve. Mummy? Yes, love. Can I help you stitch this time? She nodded. Together, they worked in silence. A mother, a son, a small apartment filled with fabric, thread, and something harder to name, but stronger than both. Elsewhere, Chaik walked through a construction site his company was funding. It would become a community library and tech hub. No plaques, no name, no press. Just impact. A worker asked, Sir, who's it named after? Chaik smiled. No one. Just call it the Quiet Gate. It was a Saturday. Clouds hung low, like they were watching. A quiet breeze moved through Kubwa as families gathered for the grand opening of a new community library and tech hub. There were no celebrity hosts. No champagne. Just a banner. The quiet gate, a space to grow. A space to learn. Kids ran around barefoot, tugging balloons. Mothers browsed the donated bookshelves. Teenagers tapped away on computers they'd never touched before. And in one corner, volunteers were stitching custom cloth name patches for every child in attendance. That's where Adora sat. Unpaid. Unseen. Unbothered. Helping out because someone from the neighborhood committee had begged her. She didn't even know who funded the space. All she knew was, Ibuka liked the idea of books and free Wi-Fi. He tugged her sleeve. "Mummy, can I go in now?" Adora looked up. "Take off your shoes at the door." Ibuka grinned. "I love this place already." He ran off, leaving her surrounded by thread, fabric, and quiet hums of chatter. Chike arrived 30 minutes late. Baseball cap. Plain tee. No one noticed him. That was the point. He didn't want recognition. He just wanted to see it. To feel it. The first public project he'd done not to impress a boardroom, but to honor someone who walked away. He nodded to a staffer who whispered, "All on schedule, sir." He made his way inside, and froze. Because there, near the east wall, sat a woman. Bent over cloth. Helping a young girl sew her name. Adora. For a moment he thought about turning around. Leaving. Letting the moment pass. But then a small voice yelled, "Uncle Obina!" "Ibuka!" He ran up to Chike and hugged him without hesitation. "I knew you were behind this," he laughed. "This place is so cool." Chike knelt, stunned. You remember me?" Ibuka rolled his eyes. "I'm not a baby, uncle." Then, as if fate had planned it, he grabbed Chike's hand and pulled him. "Come say hi to Mummy." Adora saw them approaching. And for a moment, her fingers stopped sewing. Time slowed. Not out of fear. Not even out of heartbreak. But out of that strange, silent feeling of, "So we meet again." Chike stopped 2 feet away. "Hi," he said softly. Adora stared. "Ibuka, why don't you check out the tablet station?" Ibuka grinned. "Can I?" She nodded. He ran, leaving behind a quiet tension. Not thick, just unfinished. Chike broke it first. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I didn't know you were behind this," she replied. "The beat. It's beautiful," she added, eyes scanning the space. "Thank you," he said. "Why'd you help today?" Zora shrugged. "Because kids deserve more than excuses." Chike smiled faintly. "That's why I built it." Another pause. Not awkward, just careful. Then Adora looked at him. Really looked. "You seem lighter." He nodded. "Trying to earn that." Adora held his gaze. Then glanced down. "I read the article. About the sewing grant you're starting for single mothers." He chuckled. "Wasn't supposed to be public yet." "It is now." The pause. "You're doing good work," she said. "You inspired it." They stood there. 2 people no longer trying to rewrite the past. Just sharing the present. And for a flicker of a moment, they smiled at the same time. Later, as the event ended, Ibuka came running again. "Mummy, Uncle Obina said I can borrow books every week." Adora raised an eyebrow at Chike. "Is that true?" He shrugged. "Only if he promises to return them." "I promise." Ibuka beamed. He looked at his mum. "Can we come next Saturday?" Adora glanced at Chike. Then back at her son. "We'll see," she said gently. And for now, that was enough. That night, Chike returned to his apartment. He opened his notebook. Day 74. "I saw her again. Not as mine. Just as her." She smiled. "I didn't expect that. Maybe hope isn't about getting things back. Maybe it's about learning to be ready, if they ever return willingly." Across town, Adora folded Ibuka's clothes. Found his borrowed book tucked into his bag. She smiled. Not because of Chike, but because her son was learning. And so, she realized, was she. It began with a cough. Just a small one. Hardly noticeable. Probably dust from the books, Adora told herself, patting Ibuka's back as he curled up on the couch with his latest read from the quiet gate. But by nightfall, the cough turned into a fever. And by morning, Ibuka could barely stand. She rushed him to the nearest public hospital. Crowded. understaffed, long queues. He whimpered softly, resting his head on her lap. Mummy, I feel like I'm floating. She blinked fast, held his hand tighter. Don't worry, baby. We're here now. The doctor looked over the chart, then the lab results, then pulled Adaora aside. He's severely anemic. But what worries me more is the irregular heartbeat. He needs pediatric cardiology review. And fast. Adaora's chest tightened. How fast? The doctor hesitated. A week, max, preferably less. But, he sighed, the next appointment available through public referral is in 6 weeks. Her voice cracked. Then I'll pay. Privately. He looked at her. Quietly. Do you have 700,000 Nigerian nairas? Adaora froze. She had 42,000 Nigerian nairas in her account, and 11,000 Nigerian nairas in her tailoring shop's drawer. She left the hospital in a daze. She couldn't cry, couldn't panic, couldn't even scream. Until she found herself outside the quiet gate. The place where Ibuka smiled the widest. And the place where, as fate would have it, Chike was inside. He saw her before she said a word. And when he did, he stood instantly. Is it Ibuka? She nodded once. That's all it took. Within an hour, they were back at the hospital. With Chike speaking quietly to the head administrator. With papers flying. Payments wired. With Ibuka being transferred to a private wing. White sheets, working AC, and specialists waiting. Adaora sat at the edge of the hospital bed, watching her son's chest rise and fall, steadier now. The doctor came in. We'll monitor him overnight, but he's stable. Thank God you brought him when you did. Adaora nodded. Thank you, she whispered. But she wasn't looking at the doctor. She was looking at Chike. Later, in the hallway, she finally asked, Why didn't you hesitate? He shrugged. He's our son. She froze. He's not your son, Chike. Chike stepped closer. No. But he's the reason I became a better man. So maybe that makes him something more. Adaora blinked. He continued. Do you want me to leave? She didn't answer immediately. Then softly, No. Not tonight. The hours passed in soft tension. Shared silence. Gentle updates from nurses. At some point, Adaora fell asleep in the chair beside the hospital bed. And Chike, without thinking, removed his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Then he sat across from them. And watched. A boy. A woman. A life he once pretended to earn. Now, simply grateful to witness. In the middle of the night, Ibuka stirred. Mummy, he whispered. Chike stood up. She's sleeping. But I'm here. Ibuka smiled faintly. You still love my mummy? Chike blinked. Then knelt beside the bed. Yes. I do. Ibuka closed his eyes. She still dreams about you sometimes. Then drifted back to sleep. That morning, when Adaora woke up, Chike was still there. Coffee in one hand. A quiet expression on his face. They didn't speak right away. They didn't need to. Finally she said, I hated you. I know. I still don't trust you. I understand. But, her voice softened, I saw something yesterday. The way you stayed. The way you didn't boast or pretend. You were just here. I'll always be here, he said quietly. A nurse entered. Ibuka's test results are encouraging. You caught it early. Adaora sighed in relief. The nurse turned to Chike. Sir, are you the father? Chike and Adaora both froze. Then slowly she answered for him. He's family. For 2 days, Ibuka grew stronger. The boy who once coughed himself to sleep now laughed at cartoons. He asked for jollof rice. He asked to go home. And once, when the nurse came to check his he whispered, My mummy is smiling again. Chike watched from the side. He wasn't in control. He wasn't trying to be. He was just present. A jacket on the back of a chair. A silent second opinion during doctor updates. A man who knew he had once caused pain, and now wanted only to bring peace. On the 3rd day, as the rains fell over Abuja in slow, curtain-like waves, Adaora stepped out onto the hospital balcony. Chike joined her a few minutes later. They stood side by side. No umbrella. Just quiet drizzle. No storm. No thunder. Just that soft, honest kind of rain that makes people tell the truth. I thought about calling you, she said quietly. When? After the article. When the gossip blog stopped. When I finally had room to think again. Chike said nothing. Just waited. Adoora continued. But I didn't call. Because I was afraid of starting something I couldn't finish. Chike looked down. You don't owe me anything. She nodded. I know. Then, after a moment, she added. But that doesn't mean I don't want to give something, freely. She turned to face him. For a long time I thought you tricked me. I did, he said honestly. But I also tricked myself, she said, into thinking I was only lovable if someone struggled beside me. That if a man had wealth, he'd never understand me. She looked out into the rain again. I see now that struggle isn't the only currency for trust. Chike looked at her carefully and asked, not boldly but vulnerably, would you ever let me try again? She took a deep breath. I don't know. His chest tightened. Adoora stepped forward, placing something in his hand. He opened it. It was a sewn name patch, like the ones she'd made for the children at the quiet gate. But this one said, Obina. Chike's breath caught. Adoora smiled softly. I made this the day we met. The very first day. You helped Ibuka pick a mango from the tree, remember? He said you should stay forever. Chike laughed quietly. I remember. She looked at him. Not as a beggar. Not as a billionaire. Not even as a broken promise. But as a man. A man who stayed. Take it, she said. Not as a symbol. Not as an invitation. Just something to remind you that there was once a version of us that was good. And worth remembering. He nodded slowly. Held the patch like a prayer. I will. They returned inside. The rain still falling. Ibuka was drawing with crayons. He looked up and grinned. Mummy, Uncle Obina, come look. They joined him. 3 heads bent over a scribbled picture. A house. A garden. A man. A woman. And a boy. Who's this? Chike asked, pointing to the stick figures. Ibuka shrugged. Just drawing what I wish for. Adoora and Chike exchanged a glance. But neither spoke. Because the wish had been spoken. And some things are too fragile to touch with words. That night, Chike walked to his car. Before he opened the door, Adoora called out softly. Next Saturday, there's a book reading for children at the library. You should come. Ibuka would like it. Chike smiled. Would you like it? Adoora didn't answer. Just smiled. Then closed the hospital door behind her. Later, alone in his apartment, Chike opened his notebook. Day 77. She gave me a name patch. Not a promise. Not a reset button. Just proof that once I was chosen. That's enough for now. Maybe love isn't about begging to return. Maybe it's about being worthy, if ever invited back. Saturday arrived. The sky over Abuja was painted in soft gold and fading blue. Children gathered in clusters at the quiet gate library, bouncing in excitement. The book reading was about to begin. And at the back of the room, sitting beside Ibuka, was Chike. He wasn't wearing designer clothes. Just a white shirt, sleeves rolled. A familiar watch. And a smile that said, I'm not here for attention. I'm here because I was invited. Adoora arrived 10 minutes later. Simple ochre blouse. Hair tied back. No makeup. No statement. Just presence. The kind that filled a room without needing noise. When she saw Chike beside Ibuka, she didn't flinch. She nodded. And Chike smiled. A gentle one. No pressure. No expectations. After the reading, the children were given snacks and crayons to draw the story they'd heard. Ibuka drew a new version of his usual picture. A woman. A man. A boy. A gate. And this time a key floating above it. As the event wrapped up, Adoora stepped out for air. Chike followed. They stood again under that same tree where they'd first truly spoken. Where he once pretended to be Obina, the gateman. Now no pretense. Just Chike Obi. And a woman who had nothing to prove. Thank you for coming, she said. Thank you for letting me. He hesitated. I know this isn't the moment for declarations. But there's something I need you to know. She waited. Chaik took a breath. I will never stop respecting your silence. Or your voice. Or the distance you chose. Even if this, he gestured gently between them, never becomes what it once tried to be. I will always protect the gate between us. Edaora blinked. Why? Because you taught me that some gates don't open with force. They open with trust. She looked at him. Really looked. Then reached into her bag and pulled out a brown envelope. Inside, a sketch. A design she had drawn long ago but never completed. A two-piece men's agbada set, modern cut, elegant lines. Why are you giving me this? He asked. Because if I ever open a proper shop one day, she said softly, this will be my first male collection. She paused. And I want it to carry your name. Chaik held the sketch like it was glass. Then looked up at her. And for the first time in months, he didn't ask for more. No reunion. No romance. Can I walk you home? She smiled. I don't live far. He fell into step beside her. They walked in silence through the neighborhood. The streets alive with music and late afternoon market noise. And somewhere along the way, Chaik took off his watch, that expensive one, gold-trimmed, and handed it to a teenage boy selling groundnuts. Here, he said. Use it wisely. The boy gasped. Sir? But Chaik was already walking. Edaora glanced at him. You always give things away like that? He shrugged. Only when they no longer define me. She said nothing. But her hand brushed his. Accidentally. Maybe not. Neither pulled away. When they reached her gate, she stopped. This is it. He nodded. I know. The pause. Then Chaik said, I'm not asking to come in. She smiled. Good. Because I wasn't offering. Another pause. But softer this time. More complete. She reached for the gate. Then turned back. Obina. He looked up, surprised. You called me. She cut him off, gently. I just wanted to say, if this had started differently. He nodded. But it didn't, he finished. And maybe that's okay. She smiled. Then added, but if it ever starts again, it won't be through this gate. She pointed to her heart. It'll be through this one. Chaik stood still. Watched as she walked inside. Watched as the gate clicked shut. But this time, it didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like a pause. A comma. Not a full stop. Turned. Walked away. Lighter than he had ever been. Not because he got her back. But because he finally understood. Some stories are not fairy tales. They're folk tales. Told around fire. About men who wear masks. And women who see through them. And boys who draw homes with keys hanging over the gates. Once upon a time, in the heart of modern-day Lagos, amidst the towering glass buildings and the endless rhythm of honking cars and danfos, there lived a man named Chaik Obi. To the world, Chaik was just another face in the crowd. A delivery man weaving through the city's traffic with his faded backpack, dusty sneakers, and brown uniforms soaked in sweat. But what the world didn't know was that Chaik Obi wasn't a delivery man at all. By blood, by birth, and by empire, Chaik Obi was a billionaire. At just 32, Chaik had built one of the most successful logistics and tech infrastructure companies in Africa. His company, Obi Express, powered deliveries for banks, tech firms, embassies, even hospitals. His name echoed in investor meetings and on Forbes lists. His face, however, was rarely seen. Because Chaik valued privacy. And more than that, he longed for peace. He had everything. A mansion nestled in Banana Island. A fleet of luxury cars. A private chef. Endless access to wealth. But what he didn't have was someone who loved him for him. Not for his money. Not for his name. Not for the circles he moved in. Someone who would see him in a crowd of nobodies and still offer kindness. Someone who wouldn't look past him when his clothes weren't pressed or his shoes weren't shining. Someone like his mother had once been to his father, back when love wasn't filtered through status. One rainy night, Chaik sat alone on his balcony. The mansion was silent except for the gentle patter of rain against glass. In his hand was an old photo. His mother, smiling, cradling him as a baby, her eyes full of light. She had passed 10 years ago, but her voice still echoed in his head. Son, if you ever want to know who truly cares about your soul, strip off everything the world gave you. Then watch who still reaches out to hold your hand. And so, he made a decision. The very next morning, Chike summoned Kola, his oldest friend and now head of his private security detail. Oga, Kola blinked as he listened. You want disguise as Wetten? As a delivery man, Chike said calmly. But not under Obi Express. I'll register with one of those third-party rider apps. No one must know. Not the board, not the media. Not even my staff. Kola gaped. You're talking about traffic, heat, insults from customers. You know Lagos people don't smile when package delay. Chike chuckled. Exactly. If I can survive that world and still meet someone who sees me, not the delivery vest, not the scooter, not the packaging, then maybe I'll know it's real. That afternoon, the transformation began. Chike's private stylist gave him a thick beard and dreadlock extensions. His skin was darkened with organic oil to mimic a sunburnt tone. He wore old sneakers, tattered jeans, and a faded brown shirt with the patch of a fictional courier service called SwiftGo. His expensive cologne was traded for the smell of sweat and dust. Within 48 hours, Chike Obi, the billionaire, was gone. And in his place stood Chike, the struggling delivery guy, riding a second-hand scooter through the madness of Lagos traffic. His first day was a lesson in humility. At 6 a.m., he clocked into the app and received his first order, a food package delivery to a high-rise apartment in Victoria Island. The receptionist at the gate barely looked at him. Wait outside, she barked. Delivery boys no day enter. Chike waited under the scorching sun for 40 minutes before someone collected the package. No thanks. No eye contact. Later that afternoon, he delivered a package to a young man in Lekki who screamed at him for arriving 10 minutes late, even though the app's delay was due to an error out of his control. You people are useless, the man barked, flinging the package to the ground. Is it every day I'll be dealing with riffraff like you? Chike's face remained calm. But inside, something twisted. As dusk fell, exhausted and hungry, Chike found a shaded corner outside a local cafe to rest. His hands ached from hours of gripping the scooter handles. His back was drenched in sweat. That was when he heard a soft voice. Excuse me, would you like some puff puff? He looked up. A girl stood before him. Maybe late 20s. She wore a mustard blouse and dark jeans, her hair tied back in a scarf. There was no pity in her eyes. Just quiet warmth. I saw you resting here, she said, offering him a small paper bag. My mom always said, never eat good food in front of a hungry man without sharing. Chike blinked. No one had offered him anything all day. Not even a smile. He took the puff puff, nodded. Thank you. God bless you. She smiled. Take care of yourself, delivery man. Then she walked away. Chike watched her disappear down the street, heart pounding for reasons he couldn't explain. He didn't even get her name. That night, back in the safe house he had rented for his disguise, Chike lay on a thin mattress, holding the last puff puff in the bag. She didn't even ask for anything in return, he whispered. He stared at the ceiling, a faint smile playing at his lips. For the first time in a long time, he felt hope. The next morning, Chike woke up before the sun. He was sore. His hands ached. His back protested every movement. But none of that mattered, because the image of the woman from yesterday still lingered in his mind. The way she had looked at him, not with pity, not with judgment, but with simple, human compassion. And he hadn't even asked for it. Her face kept appearing in his thoughts, between delivery drop-offs and Lagos traffic. It wasn't about love yet. It was something deeper, recognition. The first person in a long time who had seen him without his armor and still offered kindness. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she lived. All he knew was the puff-puff and the way she said, delivery man. So he returned to the same cafe corner where he had seen her. He parked his scooter, sat on the same slab of concrete, and waited. Hours passed. People walked by. Some barely looked his way. Others wrinkled their noses. One man shouted at him for obstructing the sidewalk, even though Chaik had quietly shifted to the edge. Just as he was about to give up, he saw her. Same scarf. Same blouse. Same focused expression. She carried a plastic bag, likely groceries. She hadn't noticed him yet. "Excuse me," Chaik said softly, rising to his feet. She paused. Looked at him. Recognition flickered in her eyes. "You again," she said with a small smile. "Still delivering?" He smiled back. "Still trying." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Have you eaten?" He hesitated. "Not yet." Without a word, she opened her bag and handed him a bottle of water and a wrapped sandwich. "It's nothing fancy, but better than being hungry." "Thank you," Chaik replied, his voice thick. "Again." She shrugged. "You looked like you needed it." "What's your name?" he asked, daring to step forward. "Amara," she said. "And you?" "Chaik." "Nice to meet you, Chaik the delivery man." And with that, she walked off again. But this time, he watched the direction she went. That night, Chaik didn't return home to the mansion. He didn't even go to his safe house immediately. He sat on the scooter outside a quiet cul-de-sac where Amara had disappeared earlier. He waited until the streetlights came on. Eventually, he saw her. She stepped out of a modest two-bedroom flat, holding a plastic chair, placing it outside. Then she sat. Across the street, a few children were playing with deflated footballs. She called one over and handed him a bottle of water. Chaik watched this woman, simple, kind, quiet. She didn't know him. She didn't need to. And yet she gave. The next day, Chaik made sure his routes passed that neighborhood again. He delivered a package to a bakery 2 blocks away. Then waited. He saw her again, this time walking with a small girl, maybe 10 years old, laughing as they crossed the street. "You're always around this area," she said when she spotted him. "Do you live here?" Chaik shrugged. "Sort of. I rest here between deliveries." "Well," she said, reaching into her bag, "I only packed 1 meat pie today, but—" "No, please," he said quickly, "I'm okay. You've given enough." She raised an eyebrow. "You're refusing meat pie? You must not be Nigerian." He laughed. For the first time in a long time, it was genuine. "Fine. I'll take it. Thank you, Amara." She sat with him briefly. Just 5 minutes. But in those 5 minutes, Chaik learned more about her than he had from any woman in suits and perfume and gold. She was a primary school teacher, passionate about her pupils. She helped take care of her younger cousin, whose parents were in the village. She dreamt of opening a small learning center in the neighborhood someday. And all this, she shared while munching her own snack, seated beside a man she believed to be a broke delivery guy. "You don't talk much about yourself," she observed, tossing her serviette into a bin. "Not much to say," Chaik replied. "I'm just trying to figure life out." She didn't push. Just smiled. "Aren't we all?" But for every act of kindness, the world made sure to remind Chaik what it thought of people like him. Later that afternoon, he delivered a parcel to a luxury apartment complex in Ikoyi. The security guard barely looked at him before saying, "Go round back. Deliveries don't use this entrance." Chaik obeyed without protest. As he rounded the corner, 2 teenage boys standing outside the compound laughed at him. "Bro, you need better shoes? Those things look like they fought in a war. Make sure say you drop the package and disappear. Rich people know like Siuna type." The sting wasn't new. But today it cut a little deeper. Because today he knew what it was to be seen, if only briefly. As he climbed back onto his scooter, he muttered, "This city teaches you to be invisible, unless you have something to offer." That night, back at the safe house, Kola visited. "You day all right?" Kola asked, looking him over. "You've lost weight, Oga?" "I've found something better than weight," Chaik replied. "I found a woman who gave me her last meat pie without asking anything in return." Kola's eyes widened. Is it time for reveal?" Chaik shook his head. "No, not yet. I want to know if it's real. I want to be sure before she knows the truth." "And if she finds out you've been lying?" "Then I lose her," Chaik said, "but at least I'll know I tried with my whole heart." The next morning, Amara wasn't at her usual spot. Chaik waited. An hour passed. Then two. Still no sign. He rode past the school she had mentioned. That's when he saw her, standing outside the school gates, arguing with a man in a suit. Her expression was tense. The man waved a document in her face. She looked exhausted. Chaik parked his scooter at a distance, watching carefully. The man walked off. Amara looked like she might cry. Instead, she turned, adjusted her bag, and walked back into the school. Chaik's chest tightened. "What's going on in your world, Amara?" he whispered. "And how long can I stay on the outside looking in?" Chaik didn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about the man in the suit, the document, and Amara's face, the way her shoulders had slumped the moment the man walked away. The way her lips moved like she was repeating something to herself. Something heavy. He wanted to call her. But he didn't have her number. He wanted to walk into the school and ask. But he wasn't supposed to know she worked there. So the next day, Chaik clocked in early, mapped his delivery route to go past the school again. He waited. And waited. At lunchtime, Amara finally stepped out. She looked exhausted. Her hair tied back in a tighter scarf than usual. Her steps slower. Her eyes slightly red, like someone who had cried the night before but didn't want to admit it. She spotted him across the road. Well, she said, trying to smile. "Chaik, the delivery man. You again." Chaik grinned, but inside he was worried. "Can't help it. You're the only person in this city who gives me free puff and meat pie." She laughed weakly, then sighed. "I needed that," she said. "Today's been a rough one." "Want to talk about it?" Chaik asked carefully. She looked at him for a long time. "You ever had to fight to keep something that should already be yours?" she asked, her voice distant. "Like this school," she said, gesturing behind her. "It's a private community school, but the landlord wants to sell the building. If we don't pay 3 months back rent in 2 weeks, we'll be evicted." Chaik blinked. 3 months rent? He repeated. 600,000 naira, she replied, matter-of-factly. "I've raised 150. My principal collapsed from the stress 2 days ago. The kids, they have nowhere else to go." Chaik looked at her, heart racing. She was carrying the weight of other people's futures. On a teacher's salary. With no cameras watching. No applause. No social media posts. Just quiet grit. Later that night, Chaik sat in his temporary flat, his face buried in his hands. He could have paid that 600,000 naira without blinking. But if he did, she'd know. And the experiment would be over. So he called Kola. "She needs help," Chaik said. "But I can't give it directly. It has to come from somewhere else. An anonymous donor. A grant. Something believable." Kola was quiet on the other end of the line. "You're really falling for this girl, ABI?" he asked finally. "I already have," Chaik admitted. The next day, Chaik made a call to his foundation's CFO. Quietly, subtly, he requested that a microeducation support grant be issued through a third-party NGO. No names. No associations. Just help. By evening, the school received a formal letter. "You've been selected for a one-time educational resilience grant of 650,000 Nigerian nairas. Please find attached proof of bank transfer. No application necessary. You were nominated by a third-party field volunteer." When Amara got the news, Chaik was sitting across the street, eating suya from a paper wrap, pretending not to watch. He saw her scream. Hug a fellow teacher. Tears in her eyes. A full, unguarded smile. She had no idea who had helped her. She didn't need to know. Chaik just leaned back and whispered, "That smile was worth more than 100 million. But the world wasn't done testing them. The very next day, while Chaik was on a delivery run to an office complex, he heard shouting. A security guard was being berated by a woman in heels and sunglasses. As Chaik stepped out of the elevator, he accidentally bumped her arm. "Watch where you're going," she snapped. Chaik stepped back. "Sorry, ma." "Sorry for yourself," she hissed. "Delivery men like you always smelling like engine oil." People around turned away awkwardly. Chaik said nothing, just handed his package to reception and walked out. But just as he stepped outside, the woman followed him. "Wait," she said, studying him. "What's your name?" Chaik blinked. "Why?" Interesting, she said. Rough edges, but good height. Decent face structure. Chaik didn't respond. I have a friend who runs a modeling agency. Maybe you don't have to be a delivery boy forever. Chaik smiled politely. Thank you, but I'm not interested. Her eyes narrowed. You're refusing? Do you know who I am? No. But I know who I am, he said, voice firm. And with that he mounted his scooter and sped off. Behind him, the woman muttered, Your loss. Foolish delivery man. That night, he returned to Amara Street. She was sitting on her plastic chair again, reading a book under the soft yellow light of a rechargeable lamp. You're always around here, she said as he approached. Told you I rest here, Chaik said with a grin. She held up her book. Want to hear a poem? He nodded. She read. He wore no crown but had a king's grace. The world passed him by without seeing his face. But those with eyes that look beyond gold see where the richest stories are told. Chaik's heart squeezed. Who wrote that? He asked. She looked at him. My mother. She was a poet. Died when I was 14. Silence. Then Chaik whispered. She raised a good woman. Amara blinked. The compliment caught her off guard. Thanks, she said softly. Can I take you out one day? Chaik asked suddenly. Amara blinked. As in, on a date? Yes. She hesitated, then smiled. Maybe, but no fancy places. Just Puff Puff and Zobo. Deal. Deal. As he walked away that night, Chaik felt it fully. The connection. The warmth. The truth. But also, the fear. He was falling fast. And soon he'd have to tell her everything. The question was, would she still love the man behind the helmet? 3 days passed. 3 days of pacing, delivery runs, awkward small talk, and 100 failed attempts at courage. Chaik had never been this nervous, not even during Billionaire board meetings or global investment pitches. But this wasn't about numbers. This was about Amar. And their first official date. He had wanted to do something special. Buy her new clothes. Rent out a fancy restaurant. Call a violinist. Fly in a chef. But he knew that if he did that, it would all come crumbling down. His mask would fall. And the truth would arrive before he was ready to explain it. So instead, he followed her rules. No fancy places. Just Puff Puff and Zobo. They met at a small roadside joint Amara loved, tucked between a tailor's shop and a phone accessory stand. The plastic chairs were mismatched. The fan rotated with a squeaky protest. But it was alive, with laughter, fried air, and sizzling buns. Amara was already seated when Chaik arrived. Her scarf was blue this time. Her smile warm. You're late, delivery man. I had to finish dropping someone's express shipment of Gala and cold Coke, he said, smirking. She laughed, sipping her Zobo. So, Mr. Chaik, tell me something about you. And not the usual, I'm figuring life out line. Chaik stiffened, then smiled carefully. All right, he said, staring at the red drink in his cup. I grew up in Suralere. Only child. My mum passed when I was 16. My dad wasn't around much. I got a scholarship to study logistics management. Finished school. Tried to find work. But you know how Lagos is. Hard to breathe if you don't know someone, Amara nodded. Exactly, he lied, swallowing guilt. So, what made you choose delivery work? Chaik paused. I didn't choose it, he said slowly. But it gave me something I hadn't felt in years, freedom. Amara looked surprised. Freedom? While riding around in traffic with fumes and insults. She grinned. Exactly. I get to see life up close. Real life. People laughing, fighting, struggling, surviving. You can't get that behind glass walls and office suits. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing like she was trying to read his truth. You're different, Chaik, she said finally. Different from the other guys I've met. Chaik's stomach turned. If only she knew how different. They talked for hours. About books. Childhood. Life dreams. Amara wanted to one day build a library for underprivileged children in her neighborhood. Not some fancy one. Just 4 walls, books, and quiet space. People always talk about feeding the stomach, she said. But sometimes, the mind is starving too. Chaik was quiet for a long moment. You're incredible, he said. She blushed. You say that like you've never met a woman who reads. Not one who reads and feeds others with it. She smiled. And something shifted in that moment, subtle but powerful. Later that evening, as they walked side by side down her street, Chaik reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. They walked in silence. No titles. No pressure. Just fingers, warm and intertwined. You're not like most delivery men, Amara said suddenly. Chaik froze. Why do you say that? She laughed. Most of them are impatient, rude, sweaty, but you quote poems, you listen, you ask questions, you... She stopped walking. Chaik looked into her eyes. What if I told you? I'm just trying to be seen. Amara tilted her head. Aren't we all? That night, back at his temporary apartment, Chaik stared at his reflection. He had almost told her. The words were right there. I'm not who you think I am. But he had swallowed them. Not out of cowardice. But fear. Because the more he loved her, the more he feared losing her. Kola visited the next morning. You've got that look, he said, walking in with a bag of groceries. The look of a man who's falling into dangerous waters. I can't stop thinking about her, Chaik said. Then tell her the truth, Kola said simply. Not yet. Why? Because if I lose her after the truth, I lose her forever. But Lagos has a way of shaking secrets loose, whether you're ready or not. 2 days later, Chaik was making a delivery in Ikeja when he heard familiar laughter across the road. Turned. Mark. Walking with a group of women. All teachers from her school. One of them spotted him and whispered something. Another one laughed. Loudly. Your delivery boyfriend is watching you, one of them teased. Amara turned, surprised, and smiled when she saw him. You stalking me, sir? Just securing my Zobo supplier, Chaik replied. Her friends giggled. Don't mind us, one of them said. But Amara, be careful. These delivery boys, they can sweet talk but no plan for future. Amara smiled politely, but her voice was sharp. That delivery boy has more manners than half the bankers I've dated. The women exchanged glances. One raised an eyebrow. Interesting, she said, smirking. Well, we'll see. That night, Amara and Chaik sat together under the starless Lagos sky. Your friends seem nice, Chaik said. They mean well, she replied. But they think love comes with a paycheck. And you? I think love comes with peace. She leaned her head gently on his shoulder. And Chaik knew he was running out of time. Sooner or later, someone would recognize his face. Sooner or later, a truth would be forced out, not revealed. And if that happened, he might lose everything. The sun was high over Lagos when Chaik's past came knocking, uninvited. He had just finished a delivery at a boutique in Lekki when his phone buzzed. It wasn't the burner phone he used for his delivery account. It was his real phone, locked away in the scooter's storage compartment. Only 3 people had that number, his lawyer, his CFO, and Kola. Kola was calling. Oga, problem day, Kola said without preamble. She came to the house. Who? Genevieve. Chaik's stomach turned. Genevieve Akant. Ex-girlfriend. Daughter of one of the biggest real estate moguls in Lagos. Beautiful. Ruthless. Status obsessed. They had dated briefly 2 years ago. For 3 weeks. Enough time for her to tell every blog she was rumored fiancé to the billionaire tech CEO. Chaik had ended it when she tried to get her friend a seat on Obi Express board. He hadn't heard from her since. Until now. Back at the mansion, Genevieve sat comfortably in his living room, legs crossed, sunglasses perched on her head. Chaik, she purred when he walked in, still dressed in his dusty delivery uniform, helmet under his arm. She blinked at his outfit. Is this a costume party? What are you doing here, Genevieve? He asked, dropping the helmet. I missed you, she said, rising. I heard rumors. That you disappeared. That you gave up board meetings for backstreets. At first, I thought it was silly. But then I realized it's kind of sexy. Chaik's eyes narrowed. You didn't come here for me. She smiled. All right, fine. I have a business proposal. There's a new courier merger on the table. They want Obi Express as a partner. And they want me as the brand face. Perfect story, right? Billionaire and beauty, back together, saving Africa's logistics industry. He scoffed. I'm not interested. In the merger. Or in the media circus. Oh, Chike, she said, stepping closer. You always want to be the humble hero. But the world eats men like you alive if you don't play the game. He moved past her. The only game I'm playing right now is staying true to myself. And does she know? Genevieve asked, voice suddenly sharp. He froze. The girl. The one from the streets. The one you're sneaking around with in broad daylight like some charity case. Does she know who you really are? Chike's hands clenched. Leave, Genevieve. Fine, she said, adjusting her glasses. But when she finds out who you are, and what you've been pretending to be, don't expect her to clap. You can hide in rags, Chike, but the world knows your face. She strutted out, heels clicking on marble like gunshots. That night, Chike didn't sleep. He stood on the balcony of his mansion, watching the lights of the city flicker like stars that refused to settle. Was Genevieve right? Was he playing a game? He wasn't testing Amara to mock her. He genuinely cared. He loved her. But the truth was still a time bomb. And every moment he delayed, the fuse grew shorter. The next day, Amara texted him for the first time. Are you free later? I want to show you something. Chike replied immediately, name the time and place. She asked him to meet her at a local community center in Suralere. When he arrived, Amara was outside, holding a carton of books. She smiled when she saw him. Good. You're strong. Help me carry this. You tricked me, Chike said, laughing as he grabbed the box. Inside the center, children sat cross-legged on woven mats, listening to a volunteer read aloud from a worn-out storybook. We run a weekend reading club here, Amara explained. My students, most of them don't have storybooks at home. So I bring them here. We share what we can. Chike looked around. Faded walls. Broken fans. Smiles that refused to dim. It was beautiful. And humbling. Later, as they sat under a mango tree outside the center, Amara turned to him. You know, when I was younger, I used to dream of a man who would sweep me off my feet. And now. She smiled. I just want someone who stays. Chike looked at her. What if that man had secrets? Everyone does, she replied. It's not the secret that matters. It's what you do when it's no longer a secret. Her words sliced through him like a whisper through fog. She knew. Or maybe she didn't. But she could feel it. The distance. The mask. That evening, as they walked back to her flat, a black SUV slowly rolled past. Amara didn't notice. But Chike did. He knew that vehicle. It belonged to his mother. The next day, Kola confirmed it. Your parents are watching, Olga. They know about her. Chike's heart sank. What do they want? Same thing they always wanted, Kola said grimly. Control. Chike had to make a choice. Tell Amara the truth himself, or let the world do it for him. And if the world told her first, she would never forgive him. The rain came unexpectedly that evening. It wasn't a dramatic thunderstorm, just a quiet drizzle that crept over the rooftops like a whisper. Amara stood outside her apartment, barefoot on the veranda, watching the water bead off the edge of the awning. Chike was supposed to meet her that evening. He hadn't texted, hadn't called. Something felt off. She pulled her shawl tighter and went inside. Meanwhile, across the city, Chike sat in his mansion, his two worlds colliding violently in his mind. He had drafted a message to her 3 times. There's something I need to tell you. Amara, I haven't been honest with you. Please don't hate me when you find out who I really am. But each one ended the same way. Deleted. Because the truth wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a storm, and it was already gathering. The next morning it hit. Not from him. Not from Kola. But from someone who had no right. Amara heard a knock at the school gate. She had just finished teaching a lesson on civic responsibility when one of the pupils called her. Auntie, Woman Day find you outside. She walked to the front gate and saw a woman in a neatly pressed suit, high heels, and an expensive lace wig. The woman smiled with practiced warmth. "Miss Amara, I presume?" "Yes. Can I help you?" The woman extended a hand. "Clara Obi, Chike's mother." Amara blinked. The name meant nothing at first. But the confidence. The car parked behind her. The bodyguard standing quietly at the corner. It all made sense. "I think there's been a mistake," Amara said carefully. "I don't know any." "Oh, but you do," Clara said, smile hardening. "You know him as Chike the delivery man. But I know him as Chike Obi, the CEO of Obi Express, and my son." The world tilted beneath Amara's feet. Inside the empty staff room, Clara sat across from her like a lioness examining prey. "I came here as a courtesy," she began. "Before you hear it from someone else. My son is not who you think he is. You've been spending time with him, I hear. Building something." Amara said nothing. "You see," Clara continued, "Chike has always had a wild imagination. Playing poor. Wearing rags. Associating with people who can't even pronounce our surname properly." "Why are you telling me this?" Amara asked, her voice a whisper. "Because you deserve to know the truth. My son is a billionaire. He comes from a family that built entire sections of this city. And you? You're a sweet girl. A teacher. You mean well. But let's not pretend you belong in that world." The insult was clear, elegant, precise, and cutting. "Are you here to warn me off?" Clara smiled again. "No, dear. I'm here to offer you a chance. A clean exit." She opened her handbag and slid a white envelope across the desk. 5 million naira, she said smoothly. "More than you'll earn in 5 years at this school. Take it. Walk away. Let this be a memory." Amara stared at the envelope. Then at the woman. Then she stood. "You came all this way, dressed like royalty, to bribe a woman sitting in a plastic chair?" she asked, voice shaking but firm. "You don't understand what's at stake," Clara began. "Oh, I do," Amara cut in. "Your son didn't just lie. He let me fall for a ghost. And now, instead of owning up to it, you're here like some kind of fixer. But money won't fix this. It won't erase the lie." She pushed the envelope back. "Tell your son if he has something to say to me, he should say it himself." And with that, she walked out. Clara sat in silence for a moment, face unreadable. Then she stood, adjusted her bag, and whispered, "Your dignity is impressive. But dignity doesn't build empires." That evening, Chike arrived at Amara's house. He didn't need to knock. She was waiting outside. Arms folded. Eyes tired. "You lied to me," she said quietly. Chike opened his mouth, but no words came. "Your mother came to my school today," Amara continued. "She told me everything. She showed me everything. She offered me money." "Amara, you let me care for someone who didn't exist," she said, eyes glistening. "All those nights, all those walks, the puff-puff and the poems, you made me fall in love with a man who wasn't real. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did." Silence. "Do you even know what it feels like?" she asked, voice trembling. "To open up to someone, thinking you're equals, only to find out he was measuring you the whole time? It wasn't like that. Wasn't it?" Chike stepped forward. "Amara, the man I was when I met you, he was real. The delivery boy. The one who listened. Who laughed. Who helped you carry boxes and dreamed about your library. That man was me. He is me." She looked away. "Then why did you hide?" "Because I was scared." "Scared of what?" "That once you knew, everything would change." Amara nodded slowly. Then wiped her cheek. "Now I know." She stepped back toward her door. "Good night, Chike." "Amara, please. I need time." And the door closed. Not with a bang. Not with rage. But with the silence of a heart that was just tired. Inside, Amara sank to the floor, back against the door, tears finally spilling. Outside, Chike stood motionless in the rain. And for the first time since this journey began, he wished he had never hidden. Days passed. But for Chike, each hour felt like a punishment. He had sent texts. He had called. All he received in return were short replies. "I'm fine. I need space. Please don't show up at my gate again. And so, the delivery man who had once lit up at the sight of her smile, now waited in silence. Surrounded by the echoes of what could have been, Kola noticed the shift. He stopped by Chaik's office at the mansion, where the once vibrant Zo now sat at his desk, absent-mindedly spinning a pen. She's not picking? Kola asked. Chaik didn't respond. Oga, she deserves to be angry. But anger fades. What stays is trust. If she can't trust you again, you've lost everything. Chaik looked up. His eyes were tired. What if I can't win that trust back? Kola hesitated. Then, an idea. Let's test her. Chaik blinked. You want to test her? No, sir. She already passed the test. Now it's your turn. That evening, as they sat by the fire pit in the mansion's courtyard, Kola laid out the plan. I'll approach her. But not as your staff. She doesn't know me. I'll pose as a wealthy investor. Offer her something tempting, luxury, security, attention. Why? Chaik asked. To see if she's still holding on. If she turns me down, then you'll know her love wasn't for Chaik the delivery man. It was for you through all your flaws. And if she doesn't? Then at least you'll have your answer. Chaik said nothing for a long time. Finally, he nodded. Do it. But don't insult her. She's not a puzzle. Just be respectful. Kola gave a tight nod. I know where the line is. The next afternoon, Kola arrived in a black Mercedes-Benz, wearing a navy blue agbada and gold wristwatch. Clean-shaven. He parked by the school compound and waited. Amara appeared just before closing, her books in one arm, phone in the other. Kola stepped out of the car and walked up with practiced elegance. Excuse me, miss? She looked up, cautious. Yes. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you carry yourself like a woman of substance. My name is Daniel Afalabi. I run a real estate consultancy, and I've been looking for a community project to support. Amara raised an eyebrow. Okay. I noticed the work your school is doing. The weekend literacy program. The reading corner in the community center. Her face softened slightly, surprised that a stranger knew. How did you? I have my sources, Kola smiled gently. I came to make an offer. I'd like to sponsor your dream. Fully. A library, a resource center, anything you need. With your permission, of course. She stared at him, silent. In return, he added, I'd also like to get to know you. Outside school. Over dinner, perhaps. Amar laughed. Not cruelly, but like someone who had already walked this road before. You don't even know me. True. But I've met many people. Few carry pain the way you do, with grace. She paused. Then looked him squarely in the eye. You said your name is Daniel? Yes. Let me be honest, Daniel. That sounds like a beautiful offer. The kind any woman would dream of. But I've already loved someone who pretended to be less than he was. I won't start again by loving someone who pretends to be more. Kola blinked. She continued. Tell whoever sent you that I don't need a rich man. I need a real one. Then, with that quiet fire Chaik had fallen in love with, she walked away. That evening, Kola returned to the mansion. He didn't say a word at first. Just walked in, dropped his keys, and poured himself a glass of water. Chaik sat across the room, tense, expectant. She passed, Kola said finally. Not just with flying colors. With thunder. Chaik exhaled for the first time all day. She said, and I quote, Kola added, Tell whoever sent you, I don't need a rich man. I need a real one. Chaik covered his face with both hands. Kola smirked. Now, boss, it's your move. That weekend, Chaik sent one final message. Not a text. Not a voicemail. A handwritten letter, tucked inside a package of Puff Puff and a small bottle of Zobo, delivered by a third-party writer. Amara, I never deserved your kindness. Not when I wore a mask. Not when I let silence explain my sins. You gave me your heart when you thought I had nothing. And I repaid you with doubt. I'm not writing to beg. Or explain. I'm writing to thank you. For feeding me when the world ignored me. For defending me when no one else would. For showing me what it means to be seen. If one day you decide to forgive me, I'll be waiting. Not with a mansion. Not with a title. Just with the same heart that loved you first under a dusty street lamp. Yours always, Chike. He didn't expect a reply. He didn't even hope for one. But 2 days later, as he sat in his mansion library, pretending to read but hearing only silence, his phone buzzed. Let's talk. Tomorrow. At the place where we first shared Puff Puff. Chike stared at the message. The next morning came with a breeze. Not the usual chaotic heat of Lagos, but a soft, hopeful breeze, as if the universe had decided to hold its breath. Chike arrived early. Too early. He stood beside the roadside Puff Puff stand where it had all begun. Where a woman in a mustard blouse had once handed him food with no questions asked. Where his soul had stirred for the first time in years. Now that same woman had agreed to meet him. Not because she had forgiven him, but because she hadn't walked away completely. And that was enough. He saw her approaching from a distance. Hair pulled back. Denim jacket. Simple dress. Her walk was steady, but her eyes revealed the storm still simmering inside. Chike stood. She nodded but didn't smile. They sat on the same bench beside the vendor's table, just a few feet from the dusty street corner where passers-by went about their noisy lives, unaware of the battle unfolding in silence beside them. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Amara broke the silence. You lied to me, Chike. And you let me give you all of me, when you weren't giving the truth. Chike looked down. I know. Why? His voice was low, raw. Because every time I gave someone my truth, they loved the idea of me. The name. The money. The influence. But you? You loved my silence. My hunger. My effort. I was terrified that if you saw the mansion, the press, the security, you'd walk away. So instead, she said bitterly, you gave me your poverty and waited to see if I'd stay? Chike winced. I gave you what was real. Just not what was complete. She turned to him, eyes sharp. I don't care about your money, Chike. I never have. But I care about honesty. Because I've seen too many people play pretend in this city. I thought you were different. I am different, he said. But I was also afraid. Afraid that once you saw the wealth, you'd think it was another test. Another performance. I wanted you to meet me before you met the name. Amara stood, pacing. Do you know what it's like to be made a project? She asked, voice rising. To find out that the man you loved was watching you like a social experiment? Seeing if you'd pass the test. Chike stood too. No. You weren't a test, Amar. I was the test. I needed to know if I could still be loved without the noise. Without the weight of my name. You reminded me I was human again. She blinked, caught off guard. Silence again. This time, softer. Then Amara looked at him, eyes glassy. So, what now? Chike took a deep breath. Now I stop hiding. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone, not his delivery burner, but his real phone. The one tied to his name. To his world. He opened an app, scrolled to a folder, and handed it to her. She looked down. Articles. News features. Forbes profiles. Event photos. All of them, Chike Obi. Obi Express. Billionaire founder. She swiped, slowly. Then stopped at a photo. In a tuxedo. Standing beside a global tech CEO. Smile perfect. Back straight. Surrounded by money. She looked up. You're really him. I was always me, he said. Just not the me you were expecting. Her jaw tightened. This is a lot, Chike. He nodded. I know. And I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't blame you. And your mother? Your world? Do you really think they'll let you be with someone like me? Chike stepped forward. Then let me show you what I'm willing to fight for. That evening, Chike drove himself, alone, to Amara's neighborhood. No guards. No chauffeur. No fleet. Just one man and his conviction. He knocked on her door and handed her a handwritten invitation. Come with me, he said. Meet my world. On your terms. Check. No titles. No press. No fancy gowns. Just me. And you. She took the envelope. Opened it. You're invited. Charity book drive launch, sponsored by Obi Express Foundation. Venue, Makoko Community Library Project. Date, tomorrow. This is your event? She asked. No, Chike said. It's ours. It was inspired by your dream. The next day, Amara stood at the edge of the event grounds, still unsure. But what she saw made her eyes widen. It wasn't a typical billionaire gala. There were no red carpets. No flashing lights. No influencers in designer outfits. Just a large open field, a half-constructed building with Makoko Reading Corner painted on the side, and dozens of children receiving books. And there among them was Chike, wearing a plain white shirt, sweating, lifting boxes, smiling. He spotted her, walked over. This place will hold over 3,000 books, he said, catching his breath. I named the children's section Amara's Corner. Hope that's okay. Amara stared at him. You did all this in 2 weeks? No. I've been planning it quietly since the first time you mentioned your dream. Before the lie unraveled. She looked around. The children. The walls. The laughter. You're not just apologizing with words. No, he said. Because you're not just worth words. You're worth everything. She didn't say anything right away. But as the sun began to set and the kids ran off with new books under their arms, she walked beside him quietly. She reached out and took his hand. Chike turned to her. She didn't look at him, just squeezed gently. This doesn't mean everything's fixed, she said. I know. But it means I'm listening. And just like that, the healing began. Not with fireworks, but with a bench. And a hand that chose to stay. The next few weeks were nothing short of magic. For the first time since the mask fell, Chike and Amara began to rebuild, not as strangers, not as test and subject, but as two people choosing each other, one day at a time. They took walks again, sat in silence again, laughed without pretending. And though things weren't the same, they were real. But peace, especially in the life of a billionaire, never lasts long. It started subtly. At first, Chike noticed that certain business calls were going unanswered. Then board members began sending cryptic emails. Then came the worst of it, an article published by one of the largest gossip blogs in West Africa. Obi Expresso abandons elite heiress for unknown schoolteacher in Surulere, board members concerned about erratic behavior. Accompanying the headline was a blurry photo. Chike and Amara, walking hand in hand outside the Makoko book drive. By noon it was trending. Hashtag Jacoby. Hashtag deliveryman no more. Hashtag from beggar to billionaire. Hashtag who is Amara. When Amara saw it, she froze. Not because of the headline, but because of the comments. This girl's a scammer. She trapped him. Must be jazz. No way a billionaire leaves a makaleo for a nobody. Watch her crash that company. Later that day, she walked into Chike's office, trembling. You said your world would be hard, she said quietly. But I didn't know it would come with guns aimed at my name. Chike got up instantly. I'm already handling it. How? By silencing them? Or by wishing it away? No, he said. By standing beside you. That's how. He took her hand. We'll clear your name. Properly. We'll do an interview. Let them hear your voice. See your heart. She shook her head. I didn't fall in love to become a media subject. I'm not Amara, queen of clickbait. I'm just a woman who wanted to teach children and drink Zobo on quiet nights. Chike's heart ached. Then let's remind the world of who we are. Together. But before they could begin damage control, his parents struck again. That evening, Chike returned to his mansion and found them both, Clara and Patrick Obi, waiting in the drawing room like royalty presiding over a scandal. His mother's expression was sharp. His father's, silent but firm. We warned you, Clara said, standing. We told you this girl would bring disgrace. This is my life, Chike began. No, Patrick interrupted. This is our legacy. And you're not a private citizen, Chike. You're the face of Obi Express. A brand. A dynasty. Chike's voice dropped. Then maybe you should find a new face. Clara's nostrils flared. You are not walking away from this family because of a schoolteacher. No. I'm walking toward someone who reminds me what it means to live without hiding. She pulled a letter from her purse. Tossed it on the table. This is from the board. They've requested an emergency meeting. Your recent behavior has raised concerns. Chaik laughed bitterly. Because I fell in love? Because you forgot who you are, Patrick said. No. I remembered. That night, Chaik called Kola. I need you to be ready. For what? To stand beside me if I walk into that boardroom and walk out alone. 2 days later, Chaik sat at the long oval table in the Obi Express executive wing. Every board member was present. So were his parents. And Amakalau. The polished, media-trained socialite his parents once tried to force him to marry. She walked in like she owned the room, taking the empty seat across from Chaik. I wasn't aware this was a casting call, Chaik said flatly. I was invited, Amaka replied with a smile. As a concerned stakeholder. I invested in your last expansion project, remember? Chaik blinked. Of course. A minor investment. Enough to buy a seat and leverage. The chairman of the board cleared his throat. The company is stable. But your public profile is not. We are facing pressure from media, investors, and clients. And we believe it's time for distance. You want me to leave? Not permanently, Amaka interjected. Just long enough for the storm to pass. Think of it as a sabbatical. Chaik stood, slow and deliberate. Let me be clear, he said, his voice low but powerful. I built this company from a one-room apartment and a rusty delivery bike. I built it long before any of you knew my name. And we're grateful, Clara cut in. But gratitude doesn't run companies. Stability does. Chaik's fists clenched. Then he smiled. Then let me save you the trouble. He reached into his jacket and placed a signed letter on the table. Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO of Obi Express. Guess. Even his father looked stunned. You're throwing everything away for that girl? Claire hissed. No, Chaik said, buttoning his jacket. I'm walking away from everything that never mattered. And with that he walked out. No escort. No speech. Just a man reclaiming his name without the crown. That evening he showed up at Amara's house. She opened the door. Surprised. You look calm. I've never felt more free, Chaik said. What happened? I stepped down. You resigned? Yes. Because you can't serve two masters, money and peace. I choose peace. She looked at him, eyes wide. Then softly asked, Are you sure? He nodded. I didn't lose anything today. I found something. What? Chaik smiled. The man you met the day you gave me puff puff? And didn't ask for anything in return. The world thought he had lost. The headlines said it all. Billionaire walks away from empire over romance with schoolteacher. Obi Express founder steps down amid personal distractions. A fall from power or a leap into love? But Chaik didn't care. Because for the first time in years, he had no board to impress, no stockholders to pacify, no PR handlers whispering about optics. He had freedom. He had Amara. And even if the world didn't understand, he finally understood himself. But peace, once again, was short-lived. This time, the attack came not from the boardroom, but from the streets. One Saturday morning, Chaik walked Amara to the local market. They kept things simple, shopping for beans, peppers, crayfish. He held the basket, she haggled prices. They laughed like old lovers, not public scandal. Until a woman recognized him. Isn't that the Obi Express man? Someone else joined. Not him. But why him day wear slippers and carry basket? Laughter. Then the question started. Where your fine babe? That one with makeup and accent. You know see the girl way dem say be schoolteacher? Nah this one be dat. Eyes turned. Phones came out. One woman stepped close, mocking. So this is what a billionaire falls for. Nawa. Gotta beg. Amara stiffened. Chaik put his arm around her protectively. But it was too late. Someone threw sachet water. It burst against Chaik's back. Laughter. Oga billionaire, no vex. Maybe now you go fit cool your body. Chaik turned to confront the crowd. But Amara was already dragging him away, face red with shame. They got home. Chaik tried to speak. She wouldn't let him. You see? This is what I meant, she said, pacing. I can handle the whispers. But not the humiliation. Let them talk, Chaik said. Let them choke on their own mockery. But I'm choking, Chaik. I didn't ask for this. You might have walked away from your empire, but now I'm carrying its ruins. She sat down, trembling. I thought we could build something. Quietly. But your shadow follows us everywhere. I'm starting to forget what silence feels like. Chaik knelt before her. Then let's go, he whispered. Go where? Anywhere. Let's leave Lagos. Let's disappear for a while. No press. No parents. Just air, books, and a house where the only noise is our laughter. Amara blinked. You'd give all this up, again? Chaik smiled. Amara, I already gave up the world. Now I'm just asking to keep you. That same week, they packed their bags and headed to a small town in Ogun State. Far from the buzzing horns and blogs. Far from boardrooms and broken legacies. Their new home was simple. A 2-bedroom bungalow beside a riverbank. Amara took up teaching in a local school, paid voluntarily with no need for government wages. Chaik spent his days helping local farmers set up delivery cooperatives, quietly, without putting his name on anything. Evenings were spent reading, sometimes dancing, sometimes sitting in silence, watching the moon reflect on the river. They made friends who didn't know their last names. They ate roasted plantain under the stars. It wasn't magic, but it was peace. Until once again the past came knocking. One morning, a black SUV pulled up beside their gate. The knock was gentle, but firm. Amara answered. It was Kola. He stepped in, eyes darting around, impressed. So this is where you've been hiding, Olga? Chaik emerged from the backyard, wiping sweat from his brow. We're not hiding. We're healing. Kola chuckled, but his face turned serious quickly. I came with news. Good or bad? Depends how you look at it. He handed Chaik a tablet. Your resignation triggered an outcry. Investors panicked. Stock dropped. But then, people started asking for you. Not the company. You. Chaik frowned. Turns out, walking away made them realize who built the empire. He scrolled through headlines. Chaik Obi trends as the people's billionaire. Delivery boy who became king. Fans call for comeback. Obi Express faces lawsuit over mishandling CEO resignation. Chaik blinked. What are you saying? Kola sat down. The board wants you back. Not just back, they're begging. But this time with terms. My terms. Exactly. Chaik glanced at Amara, who stood at the doorway, unsure. Kola continued. They want you to return as chairman emeritus. No day-to-day politics. No interference. Full creative control. You build what you want. With who you want. Then, he paused. They want to partner on your rural delivery project. The one you've been building here. Chaik stared at him. Why the sudden change of heart? Because sometimes, the world only values peace when they realize it builds better than power. That night, Chaik and Amara sat by the river, feet in the water. If I go back, Chaik said, I won't be the same man. I won't chase the world. I'll just serve it. And me? She asked, smiling softly. You. He turned to her. You'll be the reason I come home. She laughed. Then fell quiet. So you'll be their boss again, with me in this small house? He took her hand. No. With you beside me in any house. Rich or poor. As long as it's ours. Amara looked up at the stars. Then let them talk. Let them write. Let them wonder who I am. She kissed his cheek. Because now I know who you are. It had been 6 months since Chaik stepped away from the empire he built with his bare hands. 6 months of silence. 6 months of growing roots in peace, not profit. But when he returned to Lagos, this time not in a convoy of black SUVs, but a simple saloon car, the air felt different. The Obi Express headquarters had changed. It was colder. Sharper. The receptionists whispered when they saw him. Oga Chaik. He's back. Even the elevator ride felt heavier, like the building itself remembered who he once was. He entered the boardroom with no fanfare. No security. No briefing team. Just Chaik and Kola, flanking him with a silent nod. At the far end of the table sat Clara and Patrick Obi. No longer smug. Just tense. Amaka Alau wasn't present this time. She had since moved on, rumored to be dating a foreign tech investor. Good for her. This moment wasn't about the past. It was about what came next. The chairman rose. On behalf of the board, thank you for agreeing to meet. We'd like to extend a formal reinstatement offer. Chaik raised a hand calmly. I'm not here for reinstatement. Gasps rippled down the table. I'm here to restructure. He dropped a sleek folder on the table. Inside, his vision proposal, a hybrid model of corporate leadership and social innovation. I don't want a title. I want autonomy. No press obligations. No mandatory dinners. No arranged marriages in disguise, he added, eyes briefly flicking to his mother. I will return, not to maintain an image, but to build a legacy. My way. Silence. Then Patrick Obi leaned forward. And if we say no? Chaik smiled. Then the delivery boy who built this company from scratch will do it again. From scratch. The pause. The chairman cleared his throat. The vote was already unanimous. We accept your terms, Chaik. Welcome back. Not back. Forward. In the weeks that followed, Chaik quietly resumed influence, not through speeches or interviews, but through action. His first official act as chairman emeritus? He opened a new logistics hub in Makoko. Not the flashy island. Not the elite Lekki Phase 1. Makoko. The same place where the dust of poverty first stained his slippers, and where Amara gave him puff-puff with no questions asked. At the launch, Amara stood beside him, no longer just the schoolteacher. She was his partner. And in front of media cameras, children, dignitaries, and even skeptical investors, he introduced her first. This woman, he said, holding her hand, taught me the power of quiet dignity. She reminded me that real love doesn't recognize Forbes lists. It recognizes effort, truth, and the ability to see a man beyond his name. Applause erupted. But Amara just looked at him, smiling softly. Not because of the crowd. Because of the man beside her. But behind the applause, not everyone clapped sincerely. From the shadows of the press crowd, someone watched. A man in a gray suit. Face familiar. Eyes cold. That night, Chaik received a message. A simple one. A photo. Mark. Leaving her school. Followed by the man in the gray suit. And a caption. You think you can walk away from what you built? Not without consequences. Chaik's blood ran cold. Not again, he whispered. He called Kola instantly. We have a problem. Talk to me. I need you to track a man. Gray suit. Possibly linked to a rival logistics syndicate. He's been following Amara. Already on it. Also, Chaik added grimly, tighten security. Quietly. I don't want her to panic. The next day, Amara noticed a black car trailing her after work. When she arrived home, Chaik was already waiting, face pale. Why are we being followed? Because not everyone wants peace. Some people lose money when others gain clarity. She frowned. Are we in danger? Chaik stepped closer. Not as long as I'm breathing. But deep down, he knew something had changed. This wasn't just about business. It was about revenge. Someone, perhaps from his past, perhaps from within, had decided that his resurrection was a threat. And Amara? She had become his soft spot. His weakness. His everything. Later that night, Chaik stood on the balcony, staring into the Lego skyline. He held Amara's hand quietly as they listened to the distant hum of generators and passing traffic. They're coming for us, she whispered. Let them come, he said. They're about to learn what happens when you try to destroy a man who's already lost everything and still chose love. 4 days, the threat remained invisible but present. Chaik became more vigilant. He rerouted Amara's work routes. Installed silent tracking systems. Assigned unmarked surveillance around her school. But still, no message. No attacker. No second strike. Just silence. A waiting silence. A dangerous silence. Then one evening, while Chaik was away attending a closed-door logistics summit in Abuja, Amara vanished. She had left school at 2 p.m. Didn't return home by 3 o'clock. By 4:15, her phone stopped ringing. At 5:22, Kola called Chaik mid-meeting. "Boss, we have a problem." "Where is she?" "CCTV caught her turning into Freedom Street, near the church." "But the cameras after that?" "Cut off." "Sabotaged?" "Possibly. We're pinging her last location now." Chaik didn't wait. He left the summit immediately, mid-speech, no explanation. By the time he boarded the private jet, his hands were shaking. He wasn't scared of death. He wasn't scared of failure. But he had finally found someone who mattered more than power. And now they were gone. When he landed in Lagos, Kola was waiting with a black dossier. Inside was a name: Chief Kelvin Otunla. An ex-board member. Expelled years ago for corruption. He had tried to push Chaik out once before. Felt disgraced. Humiliated. Forgotten. Or so they thought. Turns out, he had not disappeared. He had been plotting. Kelvin had resurfaced under a shell corporation. Buying up rival delivery firms. Hiring private security. And worst of all, he had quietly married Amaka Alau. The same Amaka who once sat across from Chaik at board meetings, sipping wine and plotting his public image. "He's trying to build a rival empire," Kola said. "And what better way than to destroy the image of yours? By targeting Amara?" Chaik growled. "Exactly. Then we hit back." They traced a signal from Amara's last phone ping to an abandoned estate in the outskirts of Ape. At 3:42 a.m., Chaik and Kola, along with 2 trusted former security guards, drove out in silence. No police. No press. No spectacle. Just a man who wasn't going to lose love again. They arrived at the compound. Rusting gates. Overgrown bushes. Broken lights. Inside the house, they heard movement. Then her voice. "You don't have to do this." Chaik's heart raced. He kicked the door open, sweeping in like thunder. Amara! She was tied to a chair, bruised but alive. Standing behind her, smirking, was Kelvin Otunla. "So," Kelvin said calmly, "the great Chaik Obi returns. Still dramatic. Still sentimental." Chaik didn't speak. He aimed a small handheld camera at him. "This is being live-streamed to a secure server. One wrong move and your next scandal will not be about love, it'll be about attempted murder." Kelvin shrugged. "Murder? I wouldn't touch her. I just wanted you to understand. You chose peace over power. But men like us, we don't get peace. We take power." "No," Chaik replied coldly. "You take prisoners. I build legacies." Kola stepped forward, fists clenched. But Chaik stopped him. He walked slowly to Amara, untied her gently, eyes never leaving Kelvin. "You want my company?" Chaik said. "Take the building. Take the board. Take the name." Kelvin narrowed his eyes. "What?" "You can have all of it," Chaik continued. "The trucks. The shares. Even the public praise. But here's what you'll never have." He pulled Amara close. "A woman who stayed when I had nothing. A heart that doesn't care about status. A life that doesn't need performance." Kelvin laughed. "You think love is enough to stop me?" Chaik smiled. "No. But evidence is." He clicked a small remote in his pocket. A speaker crackled. Kelvin's voice played, recorded from a bug planted earlier. "Tie her up. Quietly. I want the media to see him weak." "Guess." Kelvin lunged, panicked. Security tackled him. Chaik helped Amara. She held on to him, shaking. That night, the story broke across all platforms. Rival billionaire arrested for kidnap plot against Obi Express founder's fiancé. Chaik Obi rescues partner in daring midnight raid. #Love over legacy trends worldwide. The next morning, Chaik and Amara returned to their quiet river house. She had a cut on her lip. He had a scratch on his hand. But their hearts? Still intact. Stronger than ever. "I'm sorry," Chaik whispered. "I thought we had outrun this world. But I brought it back to your door." Amara touched his face. "Don't you understand? You didn't bring the world. You brought you. And I'd follow you into fire, Chike Obi. Because I know, after everything, you'd carry me out. He kissed her gently. And whispered, then let the world come. By morning, the story had gone viral, not just in Nigeria, but internationally. News channels flooded the airwaves with one name, Chike Obi. But this time, it wasn't about the scandal. This time, it was about courage. Billionaire risks life to save lover. From delivery boy to hero. What kind of man chooses love over empire, twice? And then it happened. Something no one could have predicted. The people spoke. First, it was a trickle of anonymous posts. Then blogs. Then mainstream media. Then influencers. From market women to political analysts. Began calling him the people's billionaire. Not for his money. Not for his cars. Not for his suits. But for his humanity. And so, under pressure from both the public and the boardroom, Obi Express rebranded. Gone were the cold marketing campaigns. Now, every delivery vehicle bore a new slogan. Driven by heart. Built on trust. Chike didn't return to the CEO seat. He didn't need to. Instead, he launched a foundation in Amara's name, the Amara Hope Initiative, focused on rural education, women empowerment, and child literacy. Amara tried to protest. I don't need the spotlight. Chike only smiled. Then let the spotlight become a lighthouse for others. But just when things seemed to finally settle, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Chike opened it. If only you knew who really betrayed you. No signature. Just a symbol, a stylized letter A in red ink. Chike's brow furrowed. What is this? Amara took the note, scanned it. Then she froze. That symbol. You know it. She nodded slowly. It was on a letterhead I once saw, on a desk. Back at the company, long before we ever met. Whose desk? Amake's. Chike's eyes narrowed. But Amake's married to Kelvin. She was part of the plot. What if she wasn't? Silence. A deeper truth was rising, uninvited. What if Amake hadn't been a pawn? What if she had been a queen, making moves of her own? Later that week, Kola confirmed it. Boss, you need to see this. He laid down a stack of confidential memos and emails. Amake had partnered with a foreign logistics syndicate 3 years prior. She had recruited Kelvin, funded rival firms, even leaked boardroom secrets to the press during Chike's first downfall. She wasn't a lover scorned. She was a rival disguised in romance. But the real twist? She had once been engaged to Chike's late brother. Yes, Chike had a brother. Twin. Dead from a car crash years ago. A brother who had rejected Amake's marriage proposal, calling her too cold, too ambitious. She never forgave your family, Kola said. She waited. And you, unfortunately, were next in line. Chike sat quietly. The world thought his battle was over. But the war was still burning, quietly. He looked at Amara. If I chase this, I might destroy everything. And if you don't? She'll rise again. Smarter. Louder. Amara reached out and held his hand. Then don't fight her like a businessman. Fight her like the man you've become. So Chike went public. He called a press conference. Not in a hotel, not in a boardroom, but under the mango tree in the village where he first delivered parcels. He stood in front of news cameras and told the full truth. I was never perfect. I made mistakes. But behind every fall was a lesson. And behind every betrayal was someone I chose to forgive. To Amake Alao, I forgive you. To the public, I thank you. To my wife, Amara, I stand here today not as a billionaire, but as your husband. And if that is all I am for the rest of my life, I will die fulfilled. The video trended for 12 days straight. Hashtag love over legacy. Hashtag Amar is the gift. Even foreign dignitaries wrote letters of praise. He was offered awards, TV deals, book contracts. He refused them all. I'm not a celebrity. I'm just a man who remembered what mattered. That night, Amara whispered. So, what now? Chike pulled her close. Now we rest. And if trouble ever comes again. He kissed her forehead. We'll face it. Together. Months passed. No more kidnappings. No more sabotage. No more backroom boardroom betrayals. Just peace. A peace so quiet that Chaik almost didn't trust it. But Amara? She taught him how to sit in silence without suspicion. Not all storms are warnings, she'd say with a smile. Some are just passing clouds. And for the first time in his life, Chaik believed her. They moved again. This time, not to hide, not to run, but to start over. A modest 2-story home on the outskirts of Calabar, overlooking the water, with space for trees, children, and chickens. Yes, Amara wanted chickens. I'm tired of city life. Let's grow something. Something that doesn't depend on stock prices. Chaik chuckled. You're marrying a former billionaire. I don't know how to raise chickens. You raised a company from dust. How hard can birds be? Their wedding was small but sacred. No helicopters. No paparazzi. No political guests. Just a barefoot ceremony beneath the same mango tree where Chaik once delivered Amara a forgotten envelope. She wore a simple white lace gown. He wore a linen kaftan. And when the local choir sang, even the birds seemed to pause and listen. Kola stood beside him as best man, dabbing at his eyes. You're soft now, Oga. I'm free now, Chaik replied. The vows were simple. I once had everything, Chaik said, voice trembling, and felt nothing. Then I lost everything, and found you. Amara took his hands. You were never poor, Chaik. You just didn't know what wealth really was. They kissed under the mango tree. The same tree where so many secrets were once hidden. And beneath it, they'd buried something. A box. Inside, Chaik's old name tag from his delivery days. The first letter Amara ever wrote him. The business card of Obi Express, scratched with the word, let go. A symbolic grave. A farewell to ambition that cost too much. In the weeks that followed, Chaik turned fully inward. He woke at 5 a.m. to feed chickens. He joined Amara on early morning school visits. He mentored teenagers in local trade schools. He was no longer Mr. Obi. He was Uncle Chaik. To them, he wasn't a billionaire. He was the man who listened, who laughed, who showed up. And then came the letter. Another one. But this time, it was not from an enemy. It was from a lawyer. Your inheritance clause has been triggered, it read. Your son, Chisholm Emmanuel Obi, is now of age. A trust left by your late brother awaits activation. Chaik froze. My brother had a son? Amara touched his shoulder gently. You okay? He nodded. I think I need to meet him. The next day, Chaik boarded a quiet bus, not a private jet, not an escort, to a secondary school in Bainway. He found the boy easily. Eyes like his late brother. Chaik watched from a distance as the teenager ran football drills with his classmates. That's him, the principal confirmed. Smart, quiet, doesn't talk about his family much. When Chaik finally introduced himself, Chisholm blinked. You look like the man in the photo my mom keeps hidden. Chaik smiled. That man was my twin brother. Your father. They sat under a tree. And for the next hour, Chaik told the boy everything. About the mistakes. About the empire. About the mango tree. About love found in low places. I don't want you to carry my name for status, Chaik said. I want you to carry it for purpose. Chisholm looked at him. Then show me how. That night, Chaik returned home to Amara, who greeted him barefoot at the garden gate. How was it? Life-changing. Do you think he'll want to be part of this life? Chaik nodded. He already is. She leaned in and kissed his cheek. Welcome to fatherhood. As crickets sang in the distance and the moon bathed the garden in silver light, Chaik whispered something to himself. If only they knew. He smiled. The poor delivery man was never poor. He was just waiting to deliver himself to the right home. Once upon a time, he had everything, then lost it all to find what mattered. Now, under the mango tree that had silently watched over his rise, fall, and resurrection, Chaik Obi stood tall. But this time, not as a CEO, not as a delivery man, not even as a viral hero, as a father, as a husband, as a man finally at peace. 3 months after meeting his nephew son Chisholm, Chike invited him to spend a summer at their home. What began as awkward conversations over boiled yam and egusi soup became late-night laughter, lessons on resilience, and bonding over farm chores. Amara watched them from the porch one evening, her hand on her belly. She was pregnant. "You haven't told him yet?" she smiled. "I will," Chike said. "But let's let him have this moment. Before everything changes again." That same week, the world once again knocked at Chike's door. A major media house from the UK offered to buy the rights to his life story. Millions. Worldwide syndication. Netflix adaptation talks. Cola called him about it, voice buzzing with excitement. "Oga, this is huge. Everyone wants to hear how you went from a beggar to a billionaire back to the village." Chike paused. "Then let them hear it from me. But not for fame. And not for money. Then for what? For legacy. For every boy who thinks silence means weakness. For every girl who believes loyalty won't be rewarded." And so, Chike wrote the story himself. Every night, after the chickens had been fed and Amara had fallen asleep beside him, he would sit at the small desk facing the garden and write. His story. Unfiltered. Unpolished. Unapologetically honest. He titled it, "If Only They Knew the Poor Delivery Man Was Actually a Handsome Billionaire." And he dedicated it to 3 people. His late brother, who taught him the cost of pride. Amara, who taught him the value of truth. And Chisholm, who taught him that love isn't inherited. It's chosen. The book went on to sell over 10 million copies worldwide. Translated into 19 languages. Read in schools, prisons, and boardrooms. Not because it had scandals. Not because it had riches. But because it had heart. At the book launch, held under the same mango tree with just a few chairs and a local children's choir, Chike stood and read his final chapter aloud. People ask me what I would have done differently. I tell them, if I hadn't fallen, I wouldn't have learned to stand again. If I hadn't disguised myself as a delivery man, I would have never met the one person who delivered me. If I hadn't lost my wealth, I'd never have discovered my worth. He closed the book. Tears filled the crowd. And Amara, holding Chisholm's hand with her other hand resting on her belly, whispered, "You did it. You found your voice." Chike looked at them both. "No," he smiled. "I found my family." Years later, long after Chike had stopped granting interviews and returned fully to the quiet rhythm of home, a group of university students showed up at his doorstep. They wanted to start a foundation for underprivileged youth, and asked if they could name it after him. Chike declined. "Name it after yourselves. After your struggle. After your future. I've had enough names. Let this one belong to you." And so, they called it the Mango Tree Foundation, where broken beginnings grow beautiful endings. And that's how the world finally understood. The poor man in faded overalls was never poor. He was simply a king waiting for the right kingdom. And in the end he found it.